Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 1st, 2011 meeting of the Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners. Mr. Cruz, could I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. 4 selectmen are present. Wilson Winslow is absent.
Thank you. Mrs. Winslow is under the weather this evening. No pun intended. Do you have any announcements, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. I have one announcement. March 26, 2011, Vietnam Veterans Day. Richard Arruda, Ronald Bumpers, James Crowley, Carlos Rose. Salute to Wareham residents killed in action while serving in the Southeast Asia. PFC Carlos James Rose Memorial Brunch. It's on Saturday, March 26 at 10 a.m. Dudley L. Brown, Post 2846, Onset, Mass. You can contact Paul Rose or Tootsie Russell. Tootsie Russell's number is 508-295-3167. Paul Rose is 508-295-9889. That's all the announcement, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Before we get started, I'd just like to thank you for filling in for me as chairman for the last 2 meetings. Appreciate that. And I would like to move along to the authorization to sign bills and documents. We don't have any. Wait, before we do that, is there anybody here who would like to speak before the board for citizens' participation this evening? Gentleman on my left. Good evening. Would you identify yourself for the record, please?
Good evening. My name is David Walton, and I'm here speaking to the sewer commissioners, is where my comments are directed. I am from Agawam Beach. We are in line for the next digging, and this is not the place to go through what I have to talk about. I am merely here to try to arrange, prior to any bidding, prior to any finalization, I want, if possible, a meeting where there will be cooperation and input from the members of our beach. Now let me first say something quickly about myself so you understand. I'm not new here. Wareham has been part of my life since 1944. I have been a sole taxpayer of my property since 1984, and I've been a registered voter and a full-time resident for about 10 years. I have not missed a town meeting, a district meeting, whatever. In other words, I care. I'm not just speaking as someone new that's worried about my property. I have no intention of giving up my property regardless of what we end up paying. But I went just as a observer when the people from Parkwood were called in downstairs across the parking lot. They were handed out very nicely knit pamphlets and everything. But the biggest problem, I wrote on it, I spoke to the engineers afterwards, they agreed with me, there was no participation. It was all finalized. All they were told was, this is the way it's going to be, period. No arguments, no suggestions, no changes. This is the way it's going to be. And I don't think that's proper when you consider the amount of money involved. Now, we have a beach where there are somewhere, the last time I compiled all the figures, somewhere 104, 105, we'll say, payees for this incoming sewer. There are more properties than that, but some have buildable double lots, etc., etc. I really don't like the fact that the last in the group, we have a very large contingent of one occupant homes. That's just a single person. We have a lot of very few rentals. We don't have rentals. There are a lot of seasonal people on our beach, and there are a lot of homes with just 2 people. Now that's not a lot of sewer output from these people. So we have the lowest number of participants or payers, and the rumor going around, and it is rumor, and I know better than to take too much faith in that, it's just phenomenal. We're going to end up with less sewer output and pay double what 400 homes are putting into a already questionable Wareham River. This is not fair, and it's not correct. It is not the right way to do things. Whether anything will change, I don't know, but I think we at least deserve a chance to put our cards on the table. I talked with Guy, who was very cooperative and very nice, but he is doing his job. He can't just stop and keep me happy, if you will. But he said he's perfectly willing to arrange so we can get some people to talk this over. And I think it's imperative that we at least be given a chance, even if nothing has changed. But I mean, I think there are at least 3 locations for pumps, if you will. And the difference in the location, cost-wise, bothersome-wise, at least put that so we can see that, rather than seeing that this is the way it has to be. But I don't want to take everybody's time because I'll rant and rave too much. But I appreciate if there was some way that we could have, prior to bidding, you know now, the way the society is going now, the per linear charge should not be anywhere near what it was for Parkwood or Oakdale, only because most contractors today are bidding to cost and nothing more. And whether the people who are already set up with their staging area here can bid lower than anybody, or whether we'll take a smaller contractor, because we have mostly dirt roads that aren't going to be paved. And the final thing, before I get up, Agawam Beach Road, which runs from Great Neck to the water, that somehow has to be, and I don't know how to go about doing this, but there's no way that we, the people on Agawam Beach, should be paying for the repaving. Digging, pipe in the ground, cover it over, we pay. Resurfacing the last surface, no. That was granted 2 or 3 years ago when they put new catch basins in, and they never resurfaced it because of upcoming sewer. That was paid for at a grant, so there's no way that that should go into the betterment charge.
That's right.
Enough said. So I apologize for taking too much of your time, but I think that would be fair, especially since everybody says how much we're going to end up paying, the fewest number paying so much, which I don't think is fair. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Walton.
You're very welcome, Mr. Walton. We'll take your comments under advisement and see what we can come up with. Anybody else this evening? Okay, fine, great, thank you. We have any bills, Mr. Cruz?
No, we don't, Madam Chair.
Great. The next thing on the agenda is the appointment of an associate member to the Council of Aging Board of Directors. I put this on the agenda at special request of the Council on Aging, and I did tell them that our usual evening for making appointments is the 3rd Tuesday of the month. This individual apparently has had their application in since September 29th and has been attending all of the meetings of the Council on Aging since then. So it's up to the board. I would like to put it up to the board whether or not they'd like to make a decision on this issue this evening. Mr. Holmes?
Madam Chair, I didn't realize you had done that. I have an issue with it, not because of the person, but I have an issue because of the process that we put in place. And I didn't realize that the application, she told me the application was just put in because she had just finished attending her 3rd meeting. So as far as I know, the application, I don't know that I've still seen it yet. The second piece of this is Mr. Cruz, and I'm sure he'll speak for himself, but this was a change. This is actually an associate member, which was voted on at town meeting in November, or whenever that wrapped up. So, you know, we haven't even gone through and done that yet. I don't see any reason to put this off for a couple of weeks. Make sure, first of all, that associate member is a valid slot following town meeting vote, because that's a new position. We did mention it, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago when I read off the list. Council on Aging was on that list, so we've put it out there that there's an opening. I'm just not so sure that we need to do this today, and we should be doing this on our normal night. The only exceptions we made to this point were the Westfield Westfield Review and Recommendations Advisory Board, because that's a new position, it's a new board, and we had close to 18 people, and we decided a couple weeks ago to start them tonight, outside of the normal order, because it's a new board. So I think we should just do this as a regular, in 2 weeks on our night, and make sure that the vote at town meeting has been certified and that there are no issues. Just my 2 cents.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Cruz?
Yes. I had brought it up because, first of all, there isn't, as of right now, there isn't any associate member. Until we get it certified, then it stands null and void. And if she's been going to all the meetings now, she might as well continue. We only got, what, 3 more meetings before June is up. And by that time, we should have certification, because we did get a few of them, but we didn't get this one back. So I think it should be put off until we do get it certified. That way we'll have more people applying for the job.
Well, you know, and
Mrs. Ekstrom?
thank you, Madam Chair. and I don't have a problem holding it off until we get the certification. But a couple of things, let's just set the record straight. We had a position for Council on Aging of someone who never attended a meeting, someone who did not show up here for even an interview. That was not the 3rd week of the month, and yet we did it. So it's a little disingenuous to say we've never done that, number one. Number two, the woman put in her application in September. She's attended, yes, 3 meetings, October, November, December, and in January they voted for her. And so I think that for us to say that we're going to wait until we get more applications to compete for this position, I think that it's just, you know, what are we trying to do to our volunteers? Are we trying to say, look, we're going to have you jump through all of these hoops, and then at the end, we're going to decide, well, we want to get 4 more people to jump through hoops so we can make it a competition. I don't mind waiting, because I agree, we do need to find out if it's a full member or an associate member, and that would come from the AG. But I think that the other things...
That was my suggestion, Mrs. Ekstrom, was to just make sure we have a position before we appoint somebody to that position. That's all.
Right, but I'm saying that as far as the other things, that there were exceptions made in the past, and like I said, if this is the only one that we've had since September 29th, and you have put it out there, it's been advertised on the website, and that we're going to wait to get more applicants, I don't think that that's very fair.
Position was not available on September 29th. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Can we
I
talk
think,
one at a time,
Mrs.
please?
Ekstrom, I think you have it all wrong. You're turning it around backwards. I said in that time we could have more members, which we could. It may be another week, it may be 2 weeks, it may be a month. So when we get it certified, now the people know out there that there is an opening for an associate member. Up until this time, we didn't have an opening for associate member. Until it comes back and we certify, then we can go. And Mr. Holmes is the chairman of the committee, so I think he has the right.
Okay, well, and just to clarify, she didn't apply for associate membership. She applied for full membership. There wasn't an opening at the time. And our office, are the ones that made the determination that it would be an associate membership based on waiting to what was coming back. So, no, and I agree. Like I said, I agree that I don't have an objection of waiting till what the Attorney General, but...
Madam Chair, I spoke to the woman a few weeks ago who explained to me what she was doing. And she's applying for an associate member. At that moment, this is only about 3 weeks ago, she had not even put in the application. That's what she told me, because she was attending her 3rd meeting.
If I could, Mr. Holmes, just for the record, the application form is date stamped in our packet, received September 29th.
Is that for a full membership or an associate member?
For a full membership.
Okay.
It just says
At the time, there were no.
Council on Aging Board of Directors.
All right.
Point of information, I don't know if I may be recognized, I sent the letter. May I ask, I sent the letter, I'm the newly appointed elected chairperson of the Council of Aging, and...
Would you come forward and speak into the mic, please? Hopefully you can add some clarification to this issue.
Martha Stern, newly elected council chairperson for the Council of Aging, and Lynn did apply in September. Our board, we did go through the process at the town meeting where we changed our membership total from 11 to 9, only because we were the only council that had so many members. At the moment, we have 9 members. So Lynn had expressed a willingness to be a full member, and that's what we hope she will end up being. At the moment, we have 9, so she's applying for associate with the hopes that she can become a full member.
Okay, thank you very much,
All right.
Mrs. Strong.
Can I just
And
ask
I-
what is this Attorney General that we're waiting for? I'm not confused.
All of the charter articles that were passed
All
to
right.
change the charter have to be certified by the Attorney General
All
as
right.
part of the bylaws, the bylaw
Thank
changes.
you. I appreciate
So that's
it.
what we would have to wait for.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You know, Madam Chair, if
Mr. Hol-
I may add to that, that is not totally correct either. We still have a position on that board where, and I don't know if this is this is probably not proper to be talking about her now, but there's a lady who still serves on that board that the board does not recognize, because the previous chair sent her home and said, you're not welcome here anymore because you missed the meeting.
Well,
That woman has not relinquished her position or come before the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen, by charter, are the only ones who can remove that woman from that committee. We have not done that yet. And she was at the meeting I was at, Mrs. Ekstrom, the other night. And so she is still holding a slot on that board till this board decides to remove her or call her in or do something. A chairperson cannot just send somebody a letter and say you're off of this board
Well,
by charter.
by charter, you are correct, but I would think that maybe she would have caused a ruckus when they did that within 16 or 18 months of it happening to her.
This just happened.
If I
A few
might,
months ago, Brenda.
it happened back in August, in the August timeframe, if I recall correctly.
6 months.
And my understanding of the bylaw and the charter is that she has to request a hearing from this board.
She's never been
And
officially removed.
she hasn't come before us to request a hearing from this board
So,
either.
we need to
But
make
in
sure
light
that-
of the,
I
but
just
if
want to do it right.
Right,
That's all
I
I want.
understand that, Mr. Holmes, and I appreciate that. I think what we need to do is to table this issue until we handle that, and also until we get the Attorney General's certification back on the associate members for the Council on Aging. And if we have that by the 15th of this month, and we have straightened out the issue with the other lady, volunteer, then we can vote on this probably on the 15th of February, if that's acceptable to the rest of the board. Mr. Cruz, is that acceptable to you?
No, go ahead.
Mr. Holmes, is that acceptable to you?
Oh, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Trying to get all these ducks in a row, clean them up, and get them started fresh.
Very good. I think we have issues with a number of our boards and their memberships, or at least several of them that I'm aware of, and we do need to get our house in order, so to speak.
Trying to go through them one at a time. Madam Chair, I'm trying to go through them as these are coming up and go through them one at a time to try to clean up the...
Thank you,
Great.
Mr. Holmes. We do appreciate that. We are going to jump out of the agenda for the next item because we have a hearing scheduled for 7:15 p.m. Would the representatives of the Rosebrook Place Hospitality like to come forward, please? Thank you. May I have a motion to open the hearing, please?
So moved.
Is there a
Okay.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. We are now hearing the matter of this application for a new year-round common victualler all alcoholic beverages license from Rosebrook Place Hospitality. Would you identify yourselves for the record, please?
Certainly, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much. My name is James Kane from the Eddie Makepeace Company, and more specifically from Rosebrook Place Hospitality, LLC. With me this evening is Tom Berkeley, my colleague.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you for coming out on this snowy night. We didn't want to have to re-advertise your hearing.
We greatly appreciate you having it. Thank you very much. Madam Chairman, as you know, some time ago, I believe it was in July, the Governor signed Chapter 194 of the Acts of 2010 that granted the town a number of additional liquor licenses. There were 2 licenses slated for the parcels along Route 28, one that has been since acquired by the company, and another one that had its area of parcels expanded so as to allow for 1 liquor license for a conference center hotel and an additional liquor license for the standalone restaurant. Clearly you have 2 hearings this evening, so we'll ask direction from you if you would like an overview of Rosebrook Place, or how exactly you'd like to have us present the information to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. I think it would be most proper if we were to do the two separate hearings. They're two separate licenses. So if you'd like to do the Rosebrook Place first, and then we'll move on and have a separate hearing for the Inn and Conference Center.
Absolutely. Before you this evening is our request for one of the two licenses approved by the legislature. This specifically is for the standalone restaurant to be located at 2476 Cranberry Highway. The background on this specific proposal, as well as the one that we'll be following, is that the company will be filing with your Zoning Board of Appeals within this month a full special permit for that parcel, which will allow, amongst a variety of things, for the creation of the pad for this restaurant. We're here this evening asking to receive the liquor license for this restaurant, consistent with the information that is in your packet. I will be listed as the manager of that, and the company is ready to move forward through various financing mechanisms to make that a reality for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kane? Mr. Andrews?
Madam Chair, through you, Jim, just remind us, because this is the so-called Wareham Jobs Bill, and I'm just so the listening audience and the board gets a full flavor as to just a number of jobs that we're talking about that would be potentially available for Wareham residents and help us with our overall economic development program.
Sure. If you look at Rosebrook Place and Rosebrook Business Park, Rosebrook Business Park is the cul-de-sac that runs down from Route 28. I'll ask Tom to open the map now. It comes from the old, if you will, Lou Avenue down across the bog into this upland. We have this building currently under construction. We'll begin to see patients in May. The second building has been filed with the planning board last week, Tom?
Yes.
Third building, we will wait to see where the market goes. Specifically this evening, we're before you for activities up at Rosebrook Place. The license that we're discussing right now will be a standalone restaurant out in front of the Hotel Conference Center. In total, we're looking at over 600 construction and permanent jobs at build-out, 250 to 300 alone within the Rosebrook Place segment of the two elements, if you will.
Great, thank you, Jim.
Does anyone have any other questions for Mr. Kane? How many seats will there be in this standalone restaurant, Mr. Kane?
Approximately 70, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't have a question for Mr. Kane. I guess I have a question for either you and Mr. Andrews. I thought you couldn't... these liquor licenses, I understand by the act of legislation, we identified exactly where these are going to be.
That's correct.
But I thought you couldn't give out a liquor license until you had a building, until you had a common vic license for seating and for that. Because usually when it's a new restaurant, we do them both together. It's already been through everything.
Can I share my research on that with you, Brenda? I can't ask you to hand me the license until such time as I come back for the common vic and all of the other local licenses that go with it. In order to secure the ultimate level of financing and secure, if you will, the complete package for both of these, having your board vote in favor of it and send it on to the ABCC lends that much more credibility to making it a reality. Having it in legislation is one thing. It's rather nebulous. It's floating around, if you will. Having your having your board voted in favor of both, having them gone to the ABCC, that puts a stamp of legitimacy on them that doesn't exist today as they float around here as a result of Chapter 194 of the Acts of 2010. Clearly, I can't ask for the license to leave your office until such time as I come back for the common vic, as you've described. And we're well aware of that.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, is that...
If I could, yes, Madam Chair, through you to Member Ekstrom. That is correct. I think when the committee looked at this, particularly when the House Chairman visited Wareham, he did understand that this was a multifaceted project, and to start with the licensing process certainly wouldn't preempt anything else happening in the future. It would just allow the business to be able to get their capital lined up, and be able to get the project bankable, if you will.
Okay, so
going
the
forward.
ABCC and the legislature, they're aware that we're gonna be handing out, or I shouldn't say handing out, we're gonna be approving a license and holding it until such time as it's built out. That's, I just wanna
Yes,
make
yeah.
sure that,
Sure.
because, like I said, we always usually do them together, and
Yes.
I thought you couldn't hand this one out or approve this one without the other, but if they're aware of it, then I don't have a problem. I mean, I'm in favor of the project, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else?
Yeah, Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Holmes.
we did something kind of similar on Main Street. I forget the number of the building now, but there was what was it? Merchants Way. No, on Main Street, the old inn. But the lady was trying to open that as a restaurant. The one with the gardens in the back.
The Rosemary Inn?
Yes, and in order for her to work with the bank, we included her in that jobs bill as well, so that and she at least had the legislation and she had kind of a stamp of approval. She didn't have a license. She had the stamp of approval so that she could go to the bank and say, yeah, if you give me this money, I can open the restaurant.
Okay, I just,
So we did that.
and that's the thing, is I'm fine with it. I just wanna
Yeah.
make sure that we don't get hammered by the ABCC because we're giving, we're approving licenses for buildings that don't exist. So as long as we got the stamp of approval by the legislature and by the ABCC, I don't have a problem with it. I just don't
Okay.
want us doing something wrong.
Thank you, Mrs. Ekstrom. I think you raise a very valid point, and I appreciate your response, Mr. Andrews. If there's nothing else to be said regarding the license, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
That was, see if there's anyone in favor or against.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor or against this license? Thank you, Mrs. Ekstrom. Hearing,
Then I'll make a
seeing
motion
no
to
one?
close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, 400. And then I would entertain a motion on the license, please, Mr. Cruz.
Special act of the state legislature, application for new year-round common victual all alcohol beverage license for Rosebrook Place Hospitality LLC, James F. Kane, manager, 2476 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, under the provisions of Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Law for the year 2011. So moved.
Is there a second?
For approval of the application, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous, 400. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move
Thank
on
you.
to opening the next hearing for the Rosebrook Place Hospitality Inn and Conference Center. Is there a motion?
Motion to open the hearing.
Thank you. Is
Second.
there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. The hearing is now open. Mr. Kane, please proceed.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chairman. This is for the application of the year-round all alcohol license for Rosebrook Place Hospitality, doing business as the Rosebrook Place Hospitality Inn and Conference Center. It's envisioned to be a approximately 100-room hotel with full function facilities. It's pictured to the rear of the property as you come down 28, and there's a ramp to 195. It would be back here overlooking the bog. We think it'll be a rather beautiful place for functions and what have you, behind the standalone restaurant that you were kind enough to just support. Tom, if you could flip it. Here's a, we've been working on design guidelines for the ZBA, because when we go in with our zoning board special permit request, we want to set the parameters for what's going on for people to understand up front. We think this architecture fits with the region. We think it's a rather attractive building. Clearly, it won't be called the Cranberry Inn, but somebody thought that was appropriate at some point. But this gives you some sense of the three-story nature of the building. The conference center detached over to toward the highway, looking down over the bogs. Again, we think it fills a void needed in this area. We think because of the building down back with South Coast occupying it, there's an inherent level of activity that can support the construction of this facility that to date has not been in this market. There is in order to pull this off, you have to have a certain 7-day-a-week occupancy rate. Right now, there's a lull at certain days of the week and certain times of the year. We think with the building down back and what we're trying to do in and around this area, along with the other growth up and down 28, we may have now hit that point where we can pull this off. Again, to the earlier conversation, Having a piece of legislation is one thing, having this board's support and ultimately the support we think we'll get from ABCC lends that much more credibility to the project moving from proposal to an actual standalone piece of work. If you have any questions, we'd be more than happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Does anyone have any questions on the Inn and Hospitality Center?
Madam Chair?
Please, Mr. Andrews.
Just for the edification of everybody listening and watching, because I think there's an important facet of this program. How many seats are there, Jim, inside the conference center?
There'll be a few hundred, Mark, depending on exactly how the layout happens in final build-out, depending on how the layout can be. You could have 2 or 3 different functions going on at a time.
Okay.
There'll be several hundred. I think of note to the board is at build-out, the Rosebrook Place should be approximately $1.87 million from Property Tax, Hotel Tax, Community Preservation Act. And this project alone, the total will add about $31 million of value to your tax roll.
Before we get to the taxes, could I just ask, what would you envision, as I have and I know the board has, having Cape Cod Community College or University of Mass Dartmouth or University of Bridgewater State doing functions or having conferences or seminars?
You bring up a great point, because one of the challenges is if you don't have the market for room rentals on a consistent 7-day week, how else can you fill the facility for revenue flow to justify the expenditure and the investment? One of the ways we think we can do that is by plugging that gap that exists. You look at the map of southeastern Mass. Where are the colleges? They tend to be in and around us, but not here. We think, given the proximity to 195, 25, and 495, we might just be able to pull off using these, what could be a facility for a wedding or a retirement party. You could easily set up for classroom space as well.
Sure.
Drawing from the various higher ed centers, Woods Hole as well, using this as a great spot for gathering those folks, providing the levels of education that may not be easily accessible to people in the area, but by virtue of this facility would be much more easily accessible and could therefore, again, fuel the effort to make this a viable project.
And that virtue of itself brings additional disposable income, whether they use it at the restaurant or in some other place nearby. I think that's an important facet. And of course, we do come down to the tax side of it, that I think the added advantage of having a facility of this type would bring a substantial impact to our local tax base.
Up front, it'll be over $150,000 in building inspection fees and what have you as well. So it starts feeding the town's coffers from word go.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Does anyone have any other questions regarding this hearing?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holmes.
If I could, please, through you. Jim, what's the, I meant to ask you, if you don't mind, what's the time frame on the restaurant?
Well, let's see. Hopefully this evening we'll walk out with both licenses. It'll go off to Boston. We're going to the ZBA. We then need to permit, hopefully early 12-ish, let's say-ish.
Do we have a date with zoning yet?
The end of the month, I believe.
Okay.
To file, this month.
And the hotel about the same time or a little later?
Well, the
obviously.
challenge ultimately will come back to, this is all great stuff. It's all been approved by MEEP, but we now need to go to Mass Highway and walk through any infrastructure changes,
right,
infrastructure investments that we need to make along with this project.
And South Coast will start to occupy in May.
In May, South Coast is
Because,
there.
one of the things that I was thinking about on this particular hotel is, now in Fall River, you have several hotels around Charlton site.
Yes.
We have a new hotel in New Bedford, close to St. Luke's.
Yes.
But people were using Dartmouth, that Marriott extended stay, right? Well, we didn't really have anything down in this part of the South Coast region. For people who come in from out of town, people come from Lower Cape, people come from Boston, and there is no place to stay here. So I think you're going to find, you may be surprised that you get a lot of overnight guests from the South Coast family as well.
Yes, I
They're in
think
for services, family visiting from out of state, come surgeries, whatever.
But besides
you're gonna find
several
that.
of us and a variety of other people, South Coast is probably right up there with the most active level of interest and support for this project moving forward.
Right. Outstanding.
Thank you, gentlemen. Is there anyone here to speak in favor or against this project? Mr. Walton. Would you mind coming to the microphone so that at-home audience can also hear you. Thank you.
I only have, I'm very much in favor of this. My only question is towards the board. I have for the past 2-3 years, I think, in some cases, gone to the meetings in Plymouth, the meetings in Carver, and the meetings here as far as the medical center is concerned, because that's a big item as far as I'm concerned for the town. I think it's imperative that we have that, and I'm very happy about that. But what I'm getting at, it's taken 2 or 3 years. So with the marketing the way it is, these 2 items are all fine, and I'm very much for it. But how long can this, I don't want to use the word promise, but this liquor license, how long can this last when it's not being used? If someone comes and makes a problem in front of the board saying, I have a restaurant, or I have this, and I want a liquor license, and the board says that, well, we don't have one, and they complain that, well, wait a minute, how long do they wait? I don't mean this as a complaint. I mean this is something we definitely have to look at, unless there are other licenses when we got more that are available. We may have no restaurants and no problems at all. There may be some available from something that's closing. I just don't want to cause trouble for something that is good for the town. That's all I'm saying, just to be careful. That's all. Thank you.
Well,
You're
Madam
welcome,
Chair,
Mr.
could I-
Walton.
could I
Mrs.
just address-
Ekstrom?
Thank you. I would say that was the reason why, when we had the legislature, Mr. Walton, that we had to identify the exact parcels for these, so that even if this project doesn't get off the ground in the spring or the summer, and someone comes in September, they couldn't have that license if they wanted to, because in the act of the legislature, it was specifically identified.
That's
So,
correct.
and they are, yeah, and they're over the limit of what the town is, right, exactly.
Thank
so-
you.
Well, there'll be complaints.
Thank you very
probably,
much. I'm
but-
sure that if that question should arise, we'll be easily able to answer it because of the targeted economic zones. As Mr. Andrews said, this is part of our Wareham jobs bill, if you will, that we went before the legislature to ask for these licenses. They came back, the state legislature, just for your edification, came back several times and wanted to know exactly where these licenses were going and why they were needed. So, unfortunately, somebody probably will complain, but we do have the justification and the backup for holding these licenses for these specific places. So, hopefully that won't be a problem. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak at the hearing? If not, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the hearing is closed. Will I entertain a motion on the license, Mr. Cruz, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Special act of the state legislature. Application for new year-round common vic alcohol beverage license for the Rosebrook Place Hospitality LLC, doing business as Rosebrook Place Hospitality Inn and Conference Center. James F. Kane, manager, 2472 Cranberry Highway, under the provision of Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Law for the year 2011. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? It's unanimous, 4-0-0. Good luck. I hope you get your ducks in a row and get the hospitality in and the restaurant up and running.
Thank you to
Start-
each of you. Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
And Tom will start visiting the ZBA to accomplish just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a safe
Thank you,
ride
Jim.
home.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, if I could give you the hard copies of the cards for the public hearing notification.
The next item on our agenda this evening is the appointment of interviews for the Westfield Review and Recommendation Advisory Board. We were expecting to see 6 people this evening. I know some of them have chosen to come in at a later date because of the weather this evening. I see at least 2 people here. Would everybody who's here for an interview for the RFP committee come and sit in the front row, and then we'll have you come up one at a time?
Excuse me, I put an application in today. Will that be on the list for tonight?
No, sir. You'll be called probably for the 15th. Thank you. Okay, I guess first we'll have, please identify yourself for the record, Mrs. Slavin.
Sandy Slavin, Tempest Knob Terrace.
Does anybody have a question for Mrs. Slavin, or would you like to first maybe let us know of your interest and your...
A few words. I know that some might be reluctant to place me on another committee. This is a short-lived committee. I believe that my involvement in other committees or commissions would give me a qualification to assist in the review of an RFP. I have, as part of the Minot Forest Committee, drafted an RFP for the recent survey. Part of my commitment to CPC was to make sure that that RFP was completed, submitted, and then I reviewed it for the qualifications that we placed in that RFP for the particular vendor that we selected. I have also been involved in doing the draft for the RFP for the Wareham Historical Society to use the CPC funds for a preservation plan. I'm also chair of the Open Space Committee, so part of the 7-year Open Space and Recreation Plan involves the criteria or the request to improve our existing recreational areas. My degree is I have a BS in education from Boston Bouvet College of Northeastern University, and my major was physical education. So there is a qualification there to understand the needs of recreation and playgrounds. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Slavin. Does anybody have a question for Mrs. Slavin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will read a question from Mrs. Winslow, if that's okay with you. I printed
Thank you.
her.
I was
I
just
printed her
asking
question
Mr.
because
Cruz.
she is watching on TV, waiting with bated breath to hear the answers.
Thank you. I was
this
just,
actually
just,
comes from
just if I could, I was just asking Mr. Cruz. The questions were supposed to be in the box, and I was just asking him if he had seen them in the box. So
In the
I'm glad
box?
that you were able to.
Oh, this one?
I had asked the office to print them out and send them over. So.
Oh.
But I'm glad you brought them with you because.
Well, I only see one here,
they're
other
not
than
here.
calling her husband. So Mrs. Winslow's question is, what is the one accomplishment, experience, or project that you have personally been involved in that makes you the best candidate for the committee?
I think I mentioned it as being drafting the RFP for the Minot Forest survey, being the selection committee for the decision as to which company makes that selection for that request for proposal for the survey, my education, being a major in physical education. I guess I can't come down to one. But I have been experienced with RFPs and the selection criteria for such. And to add to that, as part of my professional background at Digital Equipment Corporation, at Compaq Computers, and Hewlett-Packard, I was a program manager, which part of my job was to review all functional and technical specifications before coding started to find out any and all soft areas, gray areas, discrepancies. So before we started coding, all questions regarding the functionality were answered. I like to say I excelled in that. So if there are any holes in the RFP, I believe my review would find them before we submitted them to a open bid. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for
And
Mrs.
I
Slavin?
had my 3 questions, Madam Chair.
Please,
you were
go
away,
right ahead.
and I think Mrs. Slavin has pretty much addressed them. And one is, have you ever been involved in an RFP process? And she has in several. Have you ever reviewed and edited them? And you've done that. I wrote, those are my notes I was writing down as you were speaking. So I'm done. Thank you. And thank you for
And I
applying.
know it's another committee, but it's a short-lived one.
That's what we plan on.
I have one question, Mrs. Slavin, that I intend to ask all of the candidates as well, and that is, if you were involved in the Westfield process at all in the past, or did you attend any of the Westfield meetings? How knowledgeable are you of the Westfield project? What knowledge do you bring to the table?
I went to one of the appointing committee meetings when they were appointing the team for the Westfield review that came out as a result of town meeting. I've been to several town meetings when Westfield was being discussed. Several years ago, was it last year, Westfield was part of the 2000-2005 Open Space and Recreation Plan. I've come before this board discussing that particular proposals for use of that land that was out at Westfield.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a question for Mrs. Slavin? Mrs. Ekstrom?
Thank you. Have you had a chance to look at the RFP?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Where is it available?
It is available on the website.
Okay.
Okay. And what do you think, what do you think is the most important component in the RFP? I don't mean affordable housing or recreation. I mean, like, is there anything in particular that, through hearing about what we've been looking at or whatever, that you think that is a key component that you want to make sure that we keep in there?
That the result would be a pleasant environment to live in and to play in.
Okay, and I know that you've said it's a short-lived process. We had discussed last week about how long we think it should take. How long do you think the process should take?
Once the committee is formed, the RFP is completed by this, by the Board of Selectmen, so it can be reviewed by this, by the new committee. I would expect maybe six meetings would do it.
Okay.
And I don't know how long the 6 meetings would take, because I don't
Yep.
know how frequently the committee would meet.
Thank you. And then we also had spoken at the last meeting about that it would be the desire of the board to have, not necessarily the chairman, but at least one member to be a spokesperson, representative, or whatever, to come to our meetings on a weekly basis to update us on, you know, what's going on, or if there were any issues, so that we can address them or whatever right then. Do you have any problem with that, or do you, would you be okay with that and possibly available for that if needed?
I would be available. It would be up to the committee's decision as to who the spokesperson would be.
But you think that, but you don't have a problem with having us have someone come in on a weekly basis?
No, I think it's the right thing to do, since we
Excellent.
are advisory to this board.
Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
I think you answered everything up front, so I don't think I need it, and I know you well enough. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Slavin.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming out on this evening where the weather's not so great. Next, we have Mrs. Griswold.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's Miss. Thanks.
Thank you for submitting your application. Would you like to explain to us your interest? And might be obvious, but we'd like to hear about it in your words.
Yes. First of all, I'm the director of the Wareham Council of Aging and Social Services. I've been involved with Westfield in one way or another, or affordable housing for seniors here, since I came here in December of '08. Originally at the request of the Selectmen to meet with Mr. Heaton at that time. Beyond that, I am involved because I represent the seniors in this community to some degree, their needs. I try to listen carefully to what it is that they do need. And in my own personal life, as the adult child of 2 parents, I spent a great deal of time researching and looking on behalf of my parents for housing when they felt the need to give up their home in the state of Maine. So not only do I have an experience in my role here, but also in my roles in Maine and as the regional director for a nonprofit dealing with senior services for the state of Maine. I am an experienced grant writer. I have spent over 25 years writing grants either here in Massachusetts to the Department of Social Services or to the Department of Human Services in Maine in behalf of children, families, and seniors. I've also been a reviewer of RFPs for the state of Maine in the regions that I represented, and over years provided technical assistance in the state as well as working here in this field here.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Griswold?
Sure.
Mr. Holmes, go right ahead, please. That sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Now, this question comes from Mrs. Winslow, who is watching ever so tightly at home. What is the one accomplishment, experience, or project that you have personally been involved in that makes you the best candidate for the committee?
I think it's my work with seniors for the Council of Aging. We've now established 5 outreach offices in Wareham. We now are doing the work of the Department of Transitional Assistance, pretty much, to make it easier for seniors. My outreach opportunities have provided me with a great deal of insight into what it is that seniors in Wareham would like to see occur. I think that expanding what I offer through our department to 5 separate locations, senior locations, is a good achievement.
Thank you.
So if I'm hearing you correct, what you're saying is that based on your experience in caring for seniors,
Yes.
that you would be able to look at the RFP that we provide and make recommendations based on the outcomes for the seniors. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Based on the needs of seniors.
Based on your experience.
My experience
in dealing with seniors.
That's correct. And the needs of seniors. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice.
Do you want us?
I didn't mean to follow up on Mrs. Winslow's question, but I thought that was pertinent. So my question would be that, again, it's the same question that I told everybody last week, and basically is, your experience with RFPs, what RFPs have you been involved with, reviewed, and developed?
Okay. Originally, I wrote an RFP. I replied to an RFP for the state here in Massachusetts to provide services to families and children. I was awarded that RFP. It was a startup RFP. It was the beginning of a new project working with the Department of Human Services. When I went to Maine, I was the director of a resource and referral center in Augusta. And there I developed an RFP to provide the state with extended services to families and to children, which the state wanted. And it was the same work that I had done here in Massachusetts. In doing that, I developed a number of locations where children could be provided with educational opportunities while their parents were at work. I went on to provide technical assistance for the state of Maine as the individual who could be called in by school departments or communities to work with them on developing programs for the children in their community after school and finding the money to support those programs. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I've also written grants here if you would care to know about those. I wrote...
Well, I was really more interested in RFPs.
Okay.
So, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Mr. Holmes. My turn. Excuse me.
It's catchy.
The same question that I had for the last applicant. You mentioned that you had been somewhat involved with Westfield.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on your involvement with the Westfield project thus far?
I will. Originally, I was asked to meet with Dick Heaton, Mr. Heaton, who is your first consultant, to discuss the needs of Wareham seniors. When I came here as director of the Council of Aging and Social Services and was asked to speak before the Selectmen originally, I spoke about the needs in this community and the lack of income among seniors in the community. This community right now, based on CETA information, is at the 52.314 percentile of being at or below poverty level. Okay? What I discovered as I came here is the great need of seniors here in the community who are living on very, very fixed incomes. I was happy to work on behalf of a project that would bring affordable housing to an area that desperately needed more of it. And my experiences in the past 2 years have shown me just how much it is needed and how much greater that need is. I attended the Westfield committee meetings as much as possible once that committee was established and was available to answer questions upon request at any time regarding that.
Thank you, Mrs. Griswold.
You're
Mrs.
welcome.
Ekstrom?
Thank you. Have you had a chance to look at the RFP?
Brenda, I have not,
Okay.
but I am familiar with the previous ones and had looked at the responses that we had during that previous period of time.
Okay.
So I am familiar with all of those, also the units, and I still maintain those files.
Okay. So what do you think is the most important component for the RFP, for the overview of Westfield?
I'm interested in how many units in particular would be available to those with a very, very fixed income. As you and I know, there's a waiting list now for senior housing in the community of Wareham. It is at least a 4-year wait, if not greater, depending on where you're looking. Okay. The economy in the country right now is not good, and it's especially not good for seniors. Most seniors are facing increased costs to their health insurance. That means it's really important to look at the number of units that would be available to those who really are in desperate need of low-income, affordable housing. Yes, there should be a mix and there should be a blend, but it's particularly important that we not lose sight of the fact that the average senior has a very fixed income, that they are aging in place here as they are in other communities across the nation, that HUD mortgages have come due now and are over, so much affordable housing has now been able to raise rent. I do know of instances where a few individuals have had to leave their affordable housing in the past year because their rent went up. They could not afford it. I've also seen seniors try to work arrangements to live with another family member in an apartment complex and then have the other family member decide to move out of the area. Now that senior is stuck. If they've left affordable housing, they cannot apply again for 12 months. It's a tough time for seniors. I don't expect it'll get easier. And this opportunity to expand the affordable housing for seniors in this community is greatly, greatly needed. Gravely needed, I should say.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
how long do you think the process should take to review and recommend for the RFP?
I think it depends on the makeup of the committee, how well they adjust, how quickly they adjust to working together. It's like going to an old Tupperware party where you have to kind of feel your way around and adjust. But I would hope that it was well under a year.
Okay. And do you have any problem? The Board of Selectmen wants to have a member come in and update us. Do you see any problem with that?
No, I think it's a great idea. How else are y'all going to know
Great.
what's going on and what's needed? Unless you have that opportunity to hear it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sorry about my voice.
It's going around.
Mrs. Griswold, I have one more.
It's all right. Thank you very much.
I just have one more question, and I should have asked Mrs. Slavin the same question. I know she's still here, so maybe she can come back up at the end of our interviews this evening and respond to this question. One of the facets of the project is the the economics of the project and the potential revenue for the town, and I'm wondering how what type of analysis experience you have with cost-benefit issues.
I want to tell you that in the past 2 years, while I had other duties as well, I began looking at one of the buildings that I was overseeing. I realized quite early on that it was important to look at the energy costs and how efficiently we were not using energy, and the opportunity that that building offered to go green. Okay, I think that that's a very important issue in how this construction goes up. I meant to mention it earlier, but I think it's major. I think it's something that you have to consider, is what kinds of things can be implemented to cut the cost, to maintain, and to make sure that this building will be energy efficient. We tend sometimes when we build not to take as much consideration of that issue as we should. And in this particular point in time, we need to take a very careful look at our costs, how the location will suit, what kind of sunlight and energy we can take from nature itself to cut the cost to maintain this particular building. I've done a lot of reviewing of budgets. I'm always looking for ways to make costs more effective and to cut costs. And I have some experience with doing that over the years for the RFPs that I've written and the projects that I have initiated for the state of Maine and Massachusetts.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any last questions for Mrs. Griswold?
Thank you, Ms. Griswold.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thank you. Our next applicant this evening is Joseph Michael Schneider. Mr. Schneider, welcome. Thank you for coming out this evening. Would you like to explain a little bit about your background and your interest in being on this committee?
Good evening, Madam. Good evening, Madam Chairman. My name is Michael Schneider, and I've had probably 20 years, nearly 20 years of experience in the affordable housing industry, and also the human services management. I worked for a fairly large nonprofit CDC up in Boston that developed over 1,000 units of affordable housing, much of it for seniors. I started off in that role as a maintenance supervisor and eventually became the executive director and president of a number of non-profit affordable housing entities. I've been involved with putting out a number of RFPs for everything from breaking the ground type of construction to substantial rehabilitation of occupied units. My experience, particularly in relation to the analytical skills of putting out an RFP that realizes the economic benefit of a project that has the potential, like Westfield, where we're taking out the land cost from the project. There's certainly room there for economic benefit for the issues such as the recreational space. And I think that my experience in negotiating and putting out RFPs for work that came as a result of, or social services that came as a result of a multi-million-dollar community benefits package that was negotiated as a result of a land swap transaction that had elements similar to Westfield to it, is what makes me a great candidate for this project. I'm a member of the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust, and I've attended all of the Westfield meetings. And honestly, I put out RFPs for everything from rock salt to $16 million projects.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Holmes? I think some of your questions were answered, but you might want to ask them again specifically.
Made that easy last week. I said what my questions are. I can't see Mrs. Winslow in the TV, so I would just ask you to address Mrs. Winslow's question, which is, what is the one accomplishment, experience, or project that you've personally been involved in that makes you the best candidate for the committee?
I think that I would have to say that recognizing that having a piece of property and up in Boston, which we recognize as being a very, very valuable parcel to our institutional neighbors, and being able to negotiate a multi-million-dollar community benefits package that brought jobs training and health and wellness programs to the residents to the institution's neighboring residents.
Could you name that project, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you be more specific and name that project?
Sure. Basically, it's the new Center for Advanced Medicine owned by Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard University. We picked up 6 triple-decker buildings off of one contiguous parcel, and we moved them down the street to vacant lots within a neighborhood, and made room for the Carl J. Shapiro Center for Advanced Medicine.
Thank you. Mrs. Ekstrom? You finished,
Oh,
Mr.
sure,
Holmes?
You
Yeah.
got all your questions
No, I
in
think
your
we got
summary?
it all
Okay.
figured out.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look at the RFP?
I looked at it. I haven't looked at it recently, but I have looked at it in the past, and I'm familiar with the RFP, and I'm
Okay.
familiar with the terms of the transaction. I'm familiar with the community vision.
Okay. And what do you think the most important component of the RFP is?
I would have to say that the most important component of the RFP is making sure that there is a large percentage of a 202 component,
202.
which is
Yep. Oh, just put it right. The 202 component. Thank you.
202 component.
Okay.
Could you explain what the 202 component is,
Sure.
please?
Section 202 is basically it's housing specifically for those in some of the worst economic or who have poor economic incomes, and it's specifically designed for those 62 years of age and older, and has 62. That particular portion is 62 years of age and older. And one of the nice features about it is it's specifically designed to also incorporate within their operating budgets services for monies for transportation component and other social services, both areas, common areas, and it may be something as simple as a podiatrist coming in once a week for the residents, those type of services. And
Thank you.
I think the most important aspect of that, of 202 though, is the fact that, these residents, no matter what their income is, they'll pay 30% of their income for rent with a minimum rent of $25. So you could potentially have, depending upon the number of units, you could potentially have, if there were 50 units, you could potentially have 50 residents who are paying as little as $25 a month for rent, depending upon their incomes.
And I'm sorry, and I just want to make that clear that, first of all, this is a HUD program, but that $25 when you're talking about that, their income, make sure I'm correct with this, that it's reduced by
it's based on
other things,
30%
right?
of your income. However, if you're at zero income, there is no such thing. HUD does not believe that anybody doesn't have any income. Someone's giving you, $20 here, $20 there to pay your light bill or to go shopping. So they implemented probably 10 or 20 years ago a minimum rent that everyone is required to pay, which is $25 on any HUD property.
Okay, thank you. And let me see. How long do you think the process will take?
I think that the process should not take that long. I think most of the elements, or all the elements of the RFP are already there. I think we just need to add the maintenance of the fields, of the management of the fields. I know that I think Mr. Holmes had mentioned a date of March 22nd, but I really think that it shouldn't only take a couple of weeks after the interviews are completed to get that proposal.
So March
that RFP
22nd
out.
is a reality for you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And do you have any problem? We had discussed having a member of the committee come to our meetings and to give us an update on a weekly basis or whatever. Do you have any objection to that? And
No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's also a great way to keep the community informed
Great.
about how the process is going.
okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any other questions for Mr. Schneider? Is there anything else you'd want to say? You're all set? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Schneider, for coming in this evening. We appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we look forward to the next round of applicants next week.
And Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, we'll just continue with the same packet type of format for those who are invited for that week and have confirmed. Janet will continue to do this.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Next, we have the Town Administrator's Report. Please, Mr. Andrews.
Madam Chair, through you to the members and to the listening audience, I'd like to bring up under leadership team update, Mr. John Charbonneau, our planner, to give you an update on a number of projects. Thank you, John. That's a pretty snazzy report. And to also talk about a periodic newsletter, once again in our attempt to increase external communication to connect with the community. Mr. Charbonneau, you're on.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for the time. What I just distributed is something that Brenda Sampson and I have been discussing since I was hired. It's the establishment of a quarterly departmental report. This is the first edition, so it's going to be a work in progress. The work that goes on in the planning department often goes unnoticed because the staff in the planning department is not out and about as other departments are, such as the building department or the Board of Health. So the general public does not see a lot of the work that goes on behind the scenes. So we figured this is a good way to let people know exactly what happens in the planning department. And a couple of things that I want to address tonight are in this first report. And I want to give the Board of Selectmen an update on the Walmart public hearing. The next joint public hearing is scheduled for February 15th. However, I want to caution people that this is a slow process. This is not going to be a quick process simply because Walmart is still in the middle of their MEPA process. They have been asked to do a draft and a full environmental impact report following their environmental notification. That process alone is going to take approximately 6 months. And they cannot get any other state permits until their MEPA process is through. So any curb cut permits for Mass Highway they cannot receive until that process is finished. They also have yet to come before this board to receive their sewer connection permit, and they have yet to file with the Conservation Commission. So they have some hurdles to overcome. So this is not going to be a quick process. So anybody who still wants to attend public hearings and comment on the project, they are going to have plenty of opportunities to do so. So this is
You know it's coming, right?
yes.
Public hearings scheduled for Tuesday evenings are very difficult for the Board of Selectmen to attend. So
what I'm going to try and do is I'll try and be sensitive to that.
Thank you.
And have the boards.
You're not being too sensitive to it. You just had one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's difficult because you're trying to juggle schedules of two boards. So after this February 15th public hearing, I'll try and make the boards aware of that and have them scheduled on a night other than Tuesday night, so either Mr. Andrews or representatives from the Board of Selectmen can attend those meetings.
Thank
And
you.
You're welcome.
Could I just ask
yes.
you one question? Are you, are the meetings going to continue to be joint meetings?
For now,
Because
yes.
I think that's a
Because
great-
I would like to. I know there are some board members who would like to see it split, but I'm not in a hurry to do that because I would like both boards to get the same information from the applicant. Because then when the board split off, things become disjointed and they may not be getting the same information. Besides, I would like the planning board to hear questions that the zoning board of appeals asks and hear the answers to them, and vice versa. So my plan is to, and what I will advise the boards to do, is to keep the meetings jointly as long as possible and for the foreseeable future, and then when it's time to draft their own decisions, then split off. But while general information is being given, the bulk of the information is being given, I would prefer the boards to stay together as long as possible.
Excellent.
That is my vision for it.
Excellent.
And we
I
do
agree.
appreciate the fact that they are separate boards and they can do their own thing, but
And I can-
and
I
that you
can
don't
only
have
recommend
total
that.
control over it. But we appreciate your efforts, and we appreciate the efforts of both of those boards. This is a big project, and I think that your point regarding hearing the same thing at the same time is
We-
well taken.
We have received an initial check from the applicant to bring Hancock Associates on board as the overall peer reviewer on the project. And at the next public hearing on the 15th, I anticipate that the boards will select an additional peer reviewer to specifically deal with traffic, because that is going to be one of the major components of the project. And so that's one thing that I recommended to the boards, is that they bring on a separate consultant that specializes in traffic because of the past development of Wareham Crossing, the existing traffic conditions, and future build-out in the area, and its proximity to Route 28. So they will be hopefully making a decision on that at the next public hearing. Also, I sent out a letter with the direction of Mr. Andrews. We're trying to put together a task force to start reviewing and amending the town sign bylaws in anticipation of the work that's going to be going on Route 6 and Route 28 by the state. This is going to be an important issue. It's going to affect a lot of commercial businesses along Route 6 and 28. So we believe now is the time to get this task force together and start working on this project. And when it was discussed who should comprise this task force, we believed it was important to have a representative from each, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and the board of selectmen on this task force. And I sent out a letter, I believe, within the last week or two to each of the boards, asking that each of the boards discuss it in an upcoming meeting and appoint a representative. So I'm here to just remind you, Madam Chairperson, of that, and ask that you put that on an upcoming agenda to appoint somebody if you could.
Thank you. I believe it's on the agenda for next week.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Madam Chair, just real quick on that, just what we have found, by the way, through leadership team, just real quick on that footnote, that there could be a number of businesses that are in the right of way through no fault of their own, that we want to assist and mitigate in finding some ways to solve the problem before the project begins. So that's really the major thrust behind it, and John has played a key role in that process.
Absolutely, because we're not sure exactly which businesses this is going to happen to. However, there are going to be some businesses where their signs are currently conforming, but the changes in the roadway layout will push them into nonconformity. And we'd like to try and amend the sign bylaw to deal with that proactively, rather than reacting after the fact and have potentially the ZBA flooded with a litany of sign variance applications. So hopefully we can kind of expedite the process and get that going.
Nice for a change.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holmes.
I might be missing something, but I thought we already did this. You were appointed to be on the sign committee. Well, we've been talking about signs for 3 months now. I thought you had already volunteered to be on that committee.
Maybe I did.
Sound bite. And I know
Take
it's
it off the agenda next week
and
now.
and through you, Madam Chair, to the planner, it sounds like there's an S there.
We'll
It's
review.
sign everywhere, a sign. I'm not going to sing
Musical
for you, but
director.
you got to change that title around.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll
But no, seriously, I thought this was already done and that you,
We'll go back and take a look at that. I don't think it was specifically for this particular project. I think we were looking at,
but what the planner is talking about, then let me ask that question, because I think he's talking about the task force for the town signs, the town bylaw,
The town bylaws,
and
exactly.
1628 is just a part of that.
Exactly.
Right. So I thought we had already done
Yeah,
that.
because from since I've been hired, what I've been hearing from several people in town and board members is the need to take a look comprehensively at the town sign bylaws, and this, you're absolutely correct. This is something that would be a component.
Right. Seems
of
to
that.
me for weeks, Selectman Ekstrom has been talking about some sandwich sign somewhere that she almost hits with her truck.
I'm gonna take it one of these days. It's every
and,
day.
you know,
It's
and
there.
I can
Every night
recall.
it's
It's gonna
there.
be like a demolition
And,
derby.
and I'll put my 2 cents in here too, because you know when I first got on this board, I was the second or third meeting. There was a shop, a new shop on Main Street, and I said I didn't want neon lights. And there's a sign in the middle of the street every day, and if I had my expedition, I'd take it out. And
Show me where it is.
it's right on the corner.
Well,
I'm not going to mention a business, but it's right on Main Street. So they didn't put up a neon sign. They put this big white sign in the middle of the street. And that's just not good.
Well, the Director of Inspectional Services obviously is going to play a key role, since that office,
Right.
they
Okay.
do enforce the sign bylaw. So that's going to play a key component.
John,
in
I
this
wanted
as
to
well.
say, nice job on this.
Oh, thank you.
How is this going to get distributed to people?
Yes, I'm going to have Brenda distribute this electronically this week to all the relevant boards in town, to the Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, to anybody we
Right.
can get
Does
it to.
the public get access to this somewhere?
And
or-
I do have copies on the desk on the front counter at the Planning Department as well.
website.
Website, exactly. So
Website.
this
Yeah,
is
this
the
is
first
great.
volume, so hopefully this is something that will be quarterly, every few months. And also, if you turn to the second page, again, just making the boards and the general public aware of what some of the ongoing efforts are, and also the multiple task forces that both David Pichette and I are involved in, such as the nitrogen loading bylaw task force, the land donation task force, and the sign bylaw task force, which the conservation agent won't be involved in, but he's involved with the other 2 certainly. And also, what you'll see on the quarterly reports is just a review of some recently approved projects, recently approved applications that have come before the 3 boards, and also the fees that have been collected over the most recent 3 months by the 3 boards. And as you can see, between the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Conservation Commission over the last 3 months, I think this is indicative of the workload. This is during the winter time, during a slow economic period. The 3 boards have collected $24,000 in fees over the last 3 months. If you project that out over the course of a year, just on these 3 months, you're talking about close to $90,000 in application fees
Outstanding.
that have come in. And obviously, Conservation Commission receives the highest volume of fees, but their fee structure is such that they have smaller figures. The Planning Board fee is influenced by projects such as when a Rosebrook project comes in, the application fees that they have to process, and also 53G accounts that come in that we have to process through the town accountant and the town treasurer.
Outstanding.
Can I just ask, on
Yes.
the nitrogen loading bylaw,
Mhm.
is that the, are you referring to the regulations with the Board of Health, or is that the bylaw
Correct.
one that we're doing that?
Correct. That's the regulations with the Board of Health.
So it's
There was
regulations.
just a meeting on Monday morning, and it encompasses people who are in attendance at that meeting include Bob Ethier, also some local engineers, such as John Churchill are in attendance, and a representative from GAF, and also myself, Guy Campina, David Pichette are in attendance at this
Are
meeting.
those almost done? Because Mr. Ethier had told us when this was going when the bylaw was going to town meeting, that the regulations that he could, that they should be done in 60 to 90 days, he thought he could have them done by the end of the year.
Well, we're working off a working draft, and the Coalition for Buzzards Bay, 2 representatives are acting as facilitators, And right now, at this last meeting, we started working through the text of the working draft, comparing what the Clean Water Committee has proposed and what the Board of Health had proposed, and comparing the two and kind of discussing the differences between the two. And the main discussion point at this meeting on Monday simply was what was voted at town meeting, what is the scope of the bylaw that should be written. And so that's the main sticking point, is what is this going to apply to? You know, are we going to try and catch everything in one bylaw, or are we going to do it only for future projects of a certain scale and then come back and revisit at a later date? So right now there's discussion as far as what this will apply to.
Thank you. We'll talk later.
Thank you, Mr. Charbonneau. I think that it's so great to have point of contact within the administration that is now putting together a news report, a planning report, if you will, as that's the title of your report, and helping to keep the Board of Selectmen informed as to what's happening.
Well, things get
And
pretty
also-
crazy for both the Board of Selectmen and our departments. So I
Yes,
figure
they
having
do.
something that goes out every quarter is a good way to keep you guys informed, and that way, you know, if we don't cross paths as often as usual, then this board will know what's going on.
And you won't be leaving us, right?
No, I'm not.
Dispel the rumor.
I am not going to give that article any more credence than it deserves by commenting on it.
Thank you. We are happy to
Thank you.
have
We
you with us,
appreciate
and we
it.
hope you're with us for a long time.
Thank you.
And I think, I would say, if I can concur with Chairman Donahue, I think this is wonderful. I haven't had the pleasure of being the liaison to planning, but I have with conservation and zoning in the past, or present with conservation. And the work that these boards do, and the work that your office and, you know, Kelly and Dave and you, but, you know, Brenda Sampson, with just so much that never gets seen. So this is really nice, and I really appreciate the idea that we're actually going to be proactive for a change on addressing those issues, because we so often end up finding ourselves behind the 8 ball, and you know,
Yeah,
the zoning
it's-
sitting there saying, well, yeah, but you can't, or but we don't want this.
It's
So-
inevitable in some cases. You can't be out ahead of everything,
Right.
but everything that I believe that our department and the town can be out in front of, I believe that we should be if we can.
Great.
Excellent.
I do have one last question, if I might, and this is something that we've seen some emails on, and I know that it's still out there, but it's the issue of the sureties and the
Mhm.
Board of Selectmen's role in those sureties.
Yes.
I would look forward to, I don't want to put you on the spot right this second, but I would look forward to, and I think my colleagues would be very interested in hearing what involvement the Board of Selectmen should be having with regard to the surety process, and if you can come back the next time and educate the board on that.
Yeah, and that's
I
something
would
that
appreciate it.
as I was communicating with the Zoning Board of Appeals regarding the insurance bond on 815 Main Street, that was something that Brenda Sampson had found in the general bylaws. So there are things that we're learning and we're finding out that, hey, you know, this is the way this should be done. So it's something where it's a learning process for us as well. So I definitely will be communicating with the Board of Selectmen, and we can, you know, determine together, okay, what's the best way to bring this forward? What's the best way to conduct this review process? What point in the process should this be done? And so I look forward to working with the board to iron that out.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, while
Yes,
you're
Mr.
there, this may not be a quick question for today, but I thought the chair was going on to discuss the emails about some of the votes we took at town meeting, and that's where my question was going to be. I don't need an answer tonight, but maybe in the next week or so, we definitely need to get an answer, is on the one that came up twice. It was here last year, approved by town meeting.
The rezoning of the Conference Recreation District.
No, nope, the other one, the road.
Oh, was it Bethel Way?
Bethel Way.
Yeah. What?
So at some point, I think this board needs to be addressed, and we need to have an answer. We were told things here one night prior to town meeting that the money was going to be recouped, it wasn't going to cost the town anything, and I've seen some emails from the gentleman. So I'd like to see that. This board needs an answer on that, to know we voted in favor of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were told it wouldn't cost the town any money.
Well, I had a conversation, a phone conversation, with the direction of Mr. Andrews, with Leo Sullivan, the representative of the neighborhood there, and,
Right.
last week, and he and I discussed some things, and I would like to actually speak with Mr. Andrews about setting up a meeting. My concept was to get all the homeowners from Bethel Way to sit down with myself and Mr. Andrews and discuss a potential abetted project to reimburse Hancock Associates, because I believe the bill for Hancock Associates was a little under $1,900, $1,887, something along those lines. With 12 homeowners there, that's $157 a piece. So my hope is, after speaking with Mr. Sullivan, it was a good conversation, to continue the conversation and work out some kind of agreement where Hancock can get reimbursed by the homeowners for that work. I explained to him, and I will say it to the board, that the benefits of having the road accepted by the town and maintained by the town in perpetuity, the homeowners are not going to get a better bargain than that for $157.
Right.
Right.
You
You know,
know,
and I understand all that now, but what I'd like to see is something come back to the board that says, look, we told you this when we brought it before you. You all said you had a plan. It wasn't going to cost the town any money.
Absolutely.
And then I saw Mr. Andrews' letter to the citizens, and they seemed to be a little upset over his letter asking for the $157. So
Right.
I'd like to see that kind of come to a head and resolve,
Yeah.
and then report back to us and through Mr. Andrews in his report, so that we can answer citizens who are calling us saying, you know, why
What's
are we
going
paying
on?
for that now?
Right.
When we voted on it, it was supposed to cost the town zero.
I assure you, Mark has been in conversations with myself, and I've been in contact with Mr. Sullivan. We are working on that as we speak, so that is ongoing.
Thank you again.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
Good job, John, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, item number 3, if I could, after much review and research through not only the budget process, but the acts and resolves that provide for the town to address the emergency medical technician services to be accepted in something called Group 4, which is, I am asking the board to embrace and adopt Chapter 467 of the Mass General Laws, which deals with their retirement options as they move forward. They, in many respects, are just like our police and fire and other, in many communities, fire doubles as duties with respect to emergency medical response. And this has a very small effect on us going forward. There are 8 employees, 8 active employees in the department, and I would ask for the recommended motion as recommended by the town administrator. It is right in the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now, what will this do?
Madam Chair, it will allow them to join Group 4, which is pretty much the public safety arm of the Retirement Board, working with Bill Farmer, who's the Executive Director of the Plymouth County Retirement Association. This will have a very small effect on us going forward. It has no budgetary impact this year or next year or into the future. It really depends on when the individual decides to leave their town service going forward. And it is something that is afforded to police and fire emergency medical services personnel across the state. The law has been on the books since, not only the exact date, but in 2006. So it's been on the books since 2006. And it is something that, once again, is afforded to emergency medical services, individuals that are on the front lines serving the community going forward. And once again, it's something that can be embraced by the town if the board so chooses to.
So it has no financial impact whatsoever on the town?
At this
Not
time.
positive or negative?
At this time.
At this time, what does that mean?
It means
Does that mean this year and next year, but we're going to get slammed in 2 years?
No, it does not. There are 8 individuals that are involved here. 8 individuals. And going forward and speaking with Mr. Farmer, that he has indicated it would have a very little effect on the retirement assessment on the town. It depends on how many years a person has for service, and when they would retire given their age, and options that they would seek out depending upon if there would be some option for a spouse or somebody else in the family. So it's a retirement option for 8 individuals in the medical services for the town. And we can't tell exactly when individuals are going to be retiring, and we don't know exactly when that time is going to be. But we do know that this has been afforded through this general statute to other cities and towns that did not have the ability to have their fire service. Once again, most of the EMTs work for the fire department in other cities and towns.
All right, and so, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
No, that's okay. I think I could probably assist with the response.
Okay, so, no, that's fine. I was going to say, so right now, are they in like the town's retirement system, or their state retirement, county retirement, and this is going to just put them into a different branch of it? Is that essentially what it is? Does it give them additional perks that our other retirement people don't get? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what is the sense or the reasoning to do this. If it's not going to save us any money, it's not going to cost us any money.
It moves them from Group 2, which most of the employees in the town are in currently, to the medical services part of the law that provides them with the ability to go out on, take their retirement at a Group 4 level, which is basically public safety. It's police, it's fire. And
They can retire earlier.
Yes.
So, in fact, you reduce the number of years of service over the long term, because now they're able to, I forget what the age is, 55.
I think it's 55.
It depends on
Based on years of service.
it depends on your years of service and your age when you go out.
There's a very slight increase in the retirement benefit, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Andrews. Is that not correct?
You're correct on the age piece of it.
Oh, I thought just merely by going from Group 2 to Group 4, there's a small percentage increase in the benefit, is there not?
That's correct.
But again, at the same time, who knows, as Mr. Andrews said, when any one of the EMTs would in fact retire, or if they would move to another community, or, assessing exact costs to adopting this particular piece of legislation is very difficult to do an estimate on, because you don't know who's going to stay here, who's not going to stay, who's going to retire from the town.
It could.
What's the reason for it?
What do you...
I mean,
Madam
I'm
Chair,
just trying to get sure.
this was not allowed until, it says here 2009. The original was in 2006, which covered police officers, firefighters. In 2009, the state adopted the new portion, which allowed for EMTs, EMS service, I guess they're all grouped together, paramedics, all grouped together, because of the nature of their job, and because of the way that cities and towns in Massachusetts divvy up that role. Some belong to the police department, some belong to the fire department, some stand alone. And so they saw this, I guess, as a loophole or a benefit that people like our EMT service in Wareham and other cities around us, that they're not part of the police or fire, so they were left out. So now we're trying to make something right. In 2009, the state adopted this additional section. Now, the second point is, in the end, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Andrews can probably confirm this, but in some cases, this may actually reduce our future benefit to a EMT server, because you're actually, in a roundabout way, you can be limiting their years of service. So they can't work till they're 65 or 70. You blow them out at 55, and it reduces the years of service. So in some cases you might pay a little bit more, and in some cases you may pay a little bit less. And you can confirm that, but that's what I read, I believe.
It's an option based on the nature of the job that's different from a clerk or somebody else sitting in an office. And it's an option, and once again, please put forward.
And I think Mr. Holmes' explanation is there's an equity issue involved and the EMS, because of the standalone nature of the EMS in our community and in other communities, were in my opinion, inadvertently left out of the process at the time.
And this was also part of the agreement we just, with the contract, correct? Which is now signed?
It's going through the final stages.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Okay.
And adopting Chapter 267 of the Acts of 2006 or whatever, does that have to be also put on the warrant? Or
No.
can just the Board of
No.
Selectmen adopt it?
Just the Board of, excuse me, Madam Chair, through you, just the Board of Selectmen.
Are there any other questions regarding this recommended action? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Wareham to adopt Chapter 467, an act relative to the retirement benefits of emergency medical technicians, Paragraph G of Subdivision 2 of Section 3 of Chapter 32 of the Massachusetts General Laws as appearing in the 2006 official edition, amended and approved January 9th of 2009. The Board of Selectmen has adopted these provisions to place the full-time uniform employees of the Wareham Emergency Medical Services in the group for retirement effective February 1st, 2011.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
4-0-0.
Do you have, say, some gentlemen here this evening you might want to introduce to the rest of the board? That
I don't know if he's here.
you have some more are there any EMS personnel here?
There
Why don't
go.
you guys stand up and introduce yourself to the fellow citizens in the board?
Oh, that's cool.
I'm Don Rivera, I'm past president of the local 2895 and the new president again.
That
Can't get
sometimes
rid of it.
happens,
Can't give it
right?
up, can you?
No other volunteers available.
25 years, I know some of you, I haven't met Mr. Andrews really yet. One of my coworkers, new paramedic, Cole Pike, and Jeff Sullivan as well. I'm maybe belated answer to your question. The reason we approached the town on this, no EMT or paramedic has ever retired at full retirement in the state. And this just gives them the opportunity to do that. There's not going to be mass exodus or anything like that. I know that was a question. It just gives the person the opportunity. I'm the closest one to retirement, 25 years. I'm 57 this year, and I'm looking at least another 4 years. Everything going well.
Right. Good Lord willing and the creek don't
Yeah,
rise.
a lot longer than I
Right. They're going to be around for a while, and thank you for all that you do for the citizens of our town. I know
Thank you.
many people have expressed their gratitude and thanks for the quick, dependable, and professional services that you provide to them. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight.
Thank
and
you. Good job.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, on item B, if I might continue, on Tuesday, January 25th, I attended the Regional 911 Dispatch Feasibility Study. SERPID, our Regional Planning Commission, received a federal grant to do a study of about a dozen or so towns, and that's swelled up to about 18 and 19 now, that would employ a firm to do a full exploration of the ways to improve public safety and communications in the region. And I just wanted to report back that I attended that meeting with Lieutenant Walter Career at UMass Dartmouth, and saw a very fine display from Geocom, who will be out surveying. It doesn't mean that our dispatchers are going anywhere. It just means that there is a full court press, as we all know, for real regionalization, trying to get to real savings for cities and towns. It's all over the governor's message that he submitted last week, and this was an attempt to further explore. It doesn't mean we're going to join anything or do anything. It just means that we're exploring the process through the examination of the current 911 operations and to look at opportunities to improve the system and to save money in the process.
If I may, Madam Chair, just very quickly.
Please.
If I remember correctly, didn't the governor say that in Massachusetts we have like 291 911 call response centers, and in like the state of California they have 4? It's something like that.
Something like that, yeah. It's very dramatic.
Okay, that's what I thought. I mean, I know we're not going to a statewide type thing,
Right.
but we are looking at regional, and that could really save quite a bit of money.
A ton of money, and it's also not to put anybody out of work or displace anybody. Madam Chair, through you, it's really about trying to see if there's a way to engage the technologies to be able to help us move forward in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number C, I just wanted to give an update. One of my New Year's resolution was to get really, really involved with the rewards program, and we have been involved with that. What that means is our independent insurer through the Mass Municipal Association, Meyer, provides us with a number of updated programs. And on Wednesday, January 27th, we had Mr. David Labonte out and Miss Adrienne Magnolia to join the leadership team to try to find ways, everything from new seminars to finding ways to increase our understanding of policies and procedures to reduce our insurance costs. And they actually write us a check back, and you can see over the past several years, the Meyer Insurance Group has provided the town with $83,000 in rebates to the town, and this once again is just really keeping your eye on the ball as it relates to insurance and making certain that we have the most current up-to-date policies from police department through to the planning department. So, and it also expounds upon, I know Chairman Donohue has paid particular attention to this, it's the ethics seminars and it's the open meeting law seminars that we do that invites the best possible rebate of insurance back to the town. Just wanted to report back to you and let you know that it's working in our favor.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. You did mention a key word there with the ethics seminar, and I know that the rebates for the rewards program come from a variety of different places, but I would like to ask you if you could look into having the town council come down and review some of the ethics issues. I know we have the online ethics program, and every employee and member of board or commission is required to take those, but I'd also like to come to my attention that there are several issues with the open meeting law, and that we are not quite where we ought to be in terms of being in conformance with that open meeting law. And I think that it would be nice to have not nice, but probably necessary to have a refresher training for our boards and committees in the new open meeting law requirements. Thank you.
Very well stated. And the first time around, I know it was a very daunting opportunity for folks to grasp the new law, and the Code of Massachusetts regulations weren't even enforced then. So this is a great suggestion. I will follow up with council on not only the open meeting law refresher, but also on the state ethics commission. And I think they should be on an annual basis, at least that, perhaps even a semi-annual basis.
We do get new members to committees all the time, and they aren't always afforded the opportunity on an ongoing basis. I know that we hand everybody a copy of the open meeting law, but to have the training every year, I think, is key and critical to having somebody talk to you about what the open meeting law is, and if boards and committees have questions about what the open meeting law is about or how it should be implemented, that gives them the opportunity to ask the question and get the answer in person. So I think we had that in July of last year, and we should do it again.
Yes.
We usually do it in March or April, but we waited last year to July until the new law.
Yes.
So if we could have it again, because if I may, I just said I have that down here, because there has been so many issues on, we appoint a subcommittee, and then there are people saying, oh, well, that you don't need to keep minutes, you don't have to post it. Well, yeah, you do. Or you have joint committees.
Right.
These things are all that we keep having to go back, and we tell people, they don't believe us. And so I think that it would be ideal to have council here, and even to find out, can we make it mandatory? I know that we do have it within the first year or the first thing, one of the requirements for being on boards, committees, or commissions, but especially in light of the new changes, that, to have some type of a mandatory meeting on that, so that there is no question about it going forward.
Got it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Madam Chair, through you on item D, we have been very active over the past week and a half, and I hope I spoke as forcefully as I could at the last meeting with respect to the Governor's House 1 recommendations with respect to local aid on the general government side. I have subsequently spoken with Senator Mark Pacheco and Representative Gifford with respect to what their branches of government will be doing. And I have a letter that I sent on behalf of the town with respect to local aid from municipalities. I think it needs to be addressed. The governor's budget is up for debate, first in the House and second in the Senate. And then locally, we did form a budget review committee that met last week, and we'll be meeting this Friday. I intend to try to make myself clear with respect to 2-day meetings, and I'd like to get some evening meetings in so that we can get out to the neighborhoods and talk to people about the budget, about what the local aid formula means to us and how important it is to the town. Because we've taxed to the 2.5 levy limit, and our new growth is strong, as you can see from the early developers that were here tonight. But we need to move forward in a direction to make certain that local aid is not only stable but predictable. And through the process this year, hopefully it gets reversed with respect to a 7% cut on the general government side and additional increases to the educational side of the house. And I understand that part, but from where I sit, I'm looking at making sure that we can meet core services in our budget. The department heads will be meeting very shortly with the Finance Committee. I'll keep the board updated. And once again, I think the intent is to get as much information out to as many sectors of the community that we can, particularly the neighborhoods, making it easier for people to understand what some of these decisions will be about. And I want to thank Chairwoman Donnie for her guidance through this process, because as well as members Holmes and Cruz and Ekstrom being at the meeting, and I'm honored to be chair of this group, to be able to move forward with a dialogue that I hope is productive and that shares information that not only assists in the process but gets us the best possible budget for fiscal 2012.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
May I comment on that?
Certainly, Mr. Holmes.
I'll try to be brief.
Thank you. It is getting later.
Mr.
then.
Cruz used a little plant thing with me, like the Wicked Witch of the West did. Mr. Andrews, last week, when we spoke about this, you said that the meeting on Friday, and Mrs. Winslow was also on that committee, by the way, that meeting on Friday was a closed meeting, as I recall, and not open.
It was posted and open.
It was posted and open.
Well, I understand, but it wasn't open to the public.
Yes, it
Yes,
was.
it was.
It was.
There were audience
Because you said
members.
it wasn't going to be on Friday, that this was a housekeeping meeting where you're going to set up the rules. And
No,
so
I'm
my
sorry.
concern is this.
Sure.
Again, that these meetings are open to the public, and anybody can come. And you don't have to, if 300 people show up, I'm not suggesting that you listen to 300 people's suggestions. But what I'm suggesting is that this group meet in a location that's handicap accessible, that are open so there are seats so people can sit down. And I really have an issue with 10 o'clock in the morning meetings to discuss it. Last week you asked for all this public opinion, right? And then you have a meeting to discuss it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Most of the people who pay the bill in this town are working at that time.
If I may, Mr. Holmes, because
Sure.
I am on that committee, Friday morning, it was an open meeting. We did have members in an audience. Ms. Winslow was not there. Unfortunately, I guess you didn't get a call as the backup, or, because you weren't there. But I can tell you that it was, I guess, it was stressed that some of us would prefer to have these in the evening. And I don't want to say we were outvoted, because I don't think there was an official vote on it. But there were far more people that preferred to do it during the daytime. And the consensus, or I guess what we met at, was we'd do a couple during the day and then a couple in the evening. They are open. I believe that I had said it at the first meeting. I said it here last week, and I said it at the meeting Friday, that unless we're going into something to discuss a collective bargaining where we as the town and school side want to look into, offering a different type of health insurance or something like that, that would be the only time, in my opinion, again, under the open meeting law, that we would be able to go into executive. Other than that, they would be open public meetings. Like if it was a strategy for that, that's the only thing I could come up with to have it as a closed meeting.
If I could.
I would just say to that thank you for the comments.
And appreciate your
I would like to
re-emphasis.
see the meetings open. I'm not sure why this group would go into negotiations over union contracts.
Well, they
but
might not.
Oh, no, that isn't what I meant. What I meant is, like, say, for example, we were talking, there was I know the GIC, we're not doing that, but say it was something like that, and we wanted to say, okay, the only way we're going to be able to save X amount of dollars is if we can convince the unions to go to this thing. We would go into executive to discuss that, what our strategy would be. But, I mean, or what the recommended strategy would be for the town administrator, not that we would do anything. And that was the only thing. When they were saying they wanted to go into executive, I was looking at the 10 possible reasons to go into executive, and the only thing I could even say would be this could possibly be discussed, and that could possibly go into executive. But I agree with you, and I think I said it at the first meeting, at the meeting here. As a matter of fact, someone from our audience came up to me after the meeting and said, that's not what they agreed on. And I said, well, that's what I said. And it goes back to Chairman Donahue's point about the open meeting law. Some people don't believe that this is an open meeting because it's only 2 members of this committee and 2 members of that. But in reality, it is, whether you call it an ad hoc committee or a study committee or whatever, there are subcommittees from 3 committees or boards there. And so those subcommittees are all part of this, and therefore, I believe the open meeting law does take effect.
And if I could, Mr. Holmes, I appreciate your re-emphasis on this issue. I have felt exactly the same way since this first came up as a discussion point. I know that I wasn't here at either one of the meetings where it was discussed, but I think that the bottom line here is that principle and a right of the individual taxpayers and citizens of our community to know what is taking place in these meetings. And it's open, transparent government. It's discussion of the issues in the public eye. That's what the open meeting law is all about. And the fact that we had people on this subcommittee who felt that it could be otherwise is really appalling to me personally, as I can tell that it is to you. Mm-hmm. And so I would just like to say to the citizens, again, you have rights to know what's going on and to be part of the discussion. And so I'm sure that we will continue down that path, and that Mr. Andrews has already assured me that several of the meetings will be scheduled in the evening when people are available. I myself am unable to attend during the day, as are many people who work. So I think there are people who could contribute to the input of the meeting, whether it's after the meeting, or I know there's 300 people there. You're not going to take input from everybody at the meeting, but
Right.
People should have the opportunity to see and hear what's going on. If these meetings were to be held here in this room on television, that would be absolutely positively the best thing that could happen, in my opinion. I think that if these discussions are not aired publicly, oftentimes what happens is the information that comes from them can be distorted and played out in the public, which is exactly what I would hope and understand that people would like to try to avoid. So I really encourage the committee, the subcommittee, to think along those lines and to have these discussions. We have limited resources, and town meeting very clearly came out with their stamp of approval on and their demand for the school committee and the Board of Selectmen to work together on budgetary issues and other issues. And that was just as recently as this fall town meeting. We all voted on working together and putting it out there in the public eye. So that we aren't doing anything in a closet. Nope. I certainly would not want to be told that I was doing something in a closet, and I would never do anything in a closet. So I think that we just need to make sure that this all takes place in an open, honest, transparent discussion, and that the citizens have the opportunity to have some input as to what is best for the community. And I think that's probably enough.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And that was one of my suggestions, that this room be used. I think there is a member, I would never put anyone on the spot, but I think there's a member on that committee who's part of the Wareham community television group, and I'm sure somebody could figure out how to run that machine in the back there. And they could be live, and they could be taped, and you could show the morning meetings in the evening so people come home can watch and see what happened. I'm all in favor of the group, but not if it's not going to be in the public eye.
Well, it will be,
So-
and I think that without beating a dead horse,
I just want to make sure that,
I would
that
say,
we're promoting that.
and Mr. Andrews did give us the list of names of people that were in attendance. I strongly suggest anyone and everyone contact them and tell them that, because one of the issues at the first meeting was, and Mr. Cruz was there, and he can, I think, attest to this, is that there was a lot of concern that if you had it open to the public, that if you and I disagreed on something, we couldn't battle it out. That we had to maintain composure, or that, you know, that there couldn't be this, because they said, oh, we have to agree that, you know, we can say anything we want in this room, and then when we walk out, it's fine. Well, that's the way I am with, you know, most meetings. I might get a little hot for a couple hours, but I'm okay afterwards the next day or something. And that was, I think, what they were trying to avoid. And I think that all of us, on all of those things, should be adult enough to realize that, you know, I should be able to go to the mat for, you know, a specific issue or line in a budget if I think it's important, and you shouldn't hold it against me, which sometimes that all too often happens in this town. And I think that was what they were trying to avoid, was that when I come out and I say, you know, we don't need preschool textbooks or something, that I'm not the one who hates little children. Do you know what I mean? And that was, I can appreciate where they were going with it, but I would hope that we could raise the level of discourse so that we can stop that frenzy and handle it as adults. So, that's,
well, I
don't
think
disagree.
we had discussions about civility and respect in the community at our Stop the Violence meeting last week, and I think that we should raise the level of expectations from all of our boards and committees to have discourse in public without embarrassing each other. In any event, I think that
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Andrews has the point well taken at this.
The point is well taken. And by the way, they are public meetings and they are posted, so they are public. It's very simple in the end. We'll find the right facility and make sure that that happens as we go forward. And I do appreciate the feedback.
Thank you. I know that later on in the agenda I did have a note to do the budget review subcommittee discussion, and I don't know if there were any issues of substance that were discussed on either of the meetings that you've had thus far, but I just wanted to reiterate my feelings for this board that, I mean, we are the policy, not my feelings, but what the charter says we are. We set the policy for the budget. We give guidance to the town administrator. It's the town administrator's budget, as our policy has, as presented in the realm of our policy, and that any of the issues that come up before the board, the subcommittee proposals to change to change the town's budget should be brought back to the board for a full discussion, and that if we have any guidance and policy that we would like to give to Mr. Andrews as chairman of the board, Mrs. Winslow and Mrs. Ekstrom as our representatives on the board, as well as Mr. Holmes as the alternate, that we should make that policy and guidance known up front. So I'd like everybody to think about the budget, think again about the budget that was presented to us by Mr. Andrews, and if there's any deviation from the policy that we've already given him and the guidance that he put forward in his effort to put a budget together, to please, you know, this will be on the agenda every week from now until the budget is set and printed in the warrant and discussed right up until town meeting, in terms of what may or may not be called for changes in the budget. So if there was any issue of substance discussed at the subcommittee this past week, it would come back here. It has
There was nothing, but
there's
it
nothing
will
yet.
come back
Okay,
here.
I
do
just wanted to be
want
clear
say
that there was nothing yet. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just continue with respect to, I did skip over, I'd just like to go back just for a minute. Mr. Gifford obviously is out working on the streets. We did receive a very interesting local financial impact review from the state auditor that it was about Massachusetts dam safety. and there are noted experts in the room. But what I would like to do is put this off till next week so that Mr. Gifford can be here and present it. We also have some backup information. The auditor makes good points. He also says in his letter to the cities and towns and to the governor and other legislative leaders that the Commonwealth should establish a multi-year program for incentive financing. And those are the key terms I like to hear when we're talking about repairing dams. So this did come out on January 11th. We do have it on the, I'd like to, if I could, through you, Madam Chair, leave it on for next week and then go from there.
Yes, we would like to hear about this, and I know that we have had some information presented to us on our dams and the dam bridge, the bridge dam. We've had some discussions on them, so I think it would be an opportunity to review those issues and to see if we have some means of remedying the situations. And there's also some information that was brought to us by one of our citizens regarding upstream dam mitigation issues and how we might be able to take advantage of them. I believe it was Mr. Slavin who brought us that information, so maybe he might be willing to come in and also
Yes, I think he has a
address
whole
the
library
issues.
on dams, so we'll have to get to that part of the
Right.
library.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Madam Chair, just on status report, if I could, we are closing in on once again finalizing out the management action plan with regards to the Department of Revenue letter and independent auditors who are, by the way, wrapping up their business, and I will have some information for the board hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Cranberry Commons Task Force did not meet this past week, but we are working with Mr. Ferry on some permitting and some programs on his property. I did meet with the chief on Monday, and I will give you further update on that as I can. The model recreation program and the computer systems upgrade for Town Hall and other areas are in flow and working. We are working very closely also on trying to monitor, as Selectman Cruz has pointed out, and others, Selectman Ekstrom, that we're trying to look at how to monitor business certificates through some form of software program that could allow the building department and the town clerk to do that to ensure compliance. I am happy to say that you can now look at your own copy of the CETA grant application that was funded at $1 million. I know a number of board members, including Member Holmes, has worked very hard as a liaison on that. And we also have a land donation review working tomorrow after leadership team, weather permitting, to get some policies and procedures moving on land donations. And once again, I have spoken to you about my desire to reach out to our legislative delegation relative to local aid coming up for next year's budget. And that concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Just for clarification, on the governor's 2012 budget,
Yes.
the initial budget that you put forward to the town, you had recommended a 9% across the board cut for the town side of government, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the local aid cut that's being proposed by the governor's budget is 7%?
That's correct.
And on the school side of the budget, the governor is proposing a 3% increase in the minimum net school funding?
Approximately $1.2 million. Increase.
Increase.
Yep. And approximately on the town side, a $150,000 cut.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
You're welcome.
Okay. We have the shall we move to letter C, discussion of consumption of alcohol on town property?
Can't come tonight.
We had a request for an organization in town. They wanted to possibly use the Onset Pier to have a wine tasting event this summer, and we ran that issue by town council, and I believe we have some representatives, and I thank you for your patience. I should have called you up before we got into the town administrator's report. It's such a bad night. I apologize for not bringing you up sooner. Would you like to identify yourselves for the record, please?
Sure. I'm Eleanor Martin. I'm the new president of the Onset Bay Association. And I'm Teresa O'Neill, and I'm the new executive director of the Onset Bay Association.
Well, thank you both for coming this evening, and thank you for taking on those responsibilities. The Onset Bay Association has done some wonderful things for our community, and we look forward to working with you as the new leadership of that organization. Mr. Andrews, did you want to
Madam Chair, please.
review the
Thank you.
council's opinion on?
This is a first. I just want to say that because I did sit with Ms. O'Neill, and I'm very happy to meet Ms. Martin at their annual meeting a couple Thursdays ago, I believe. You throw quite a party.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. This is really about really trying to set some policy and procedure relative to an enclosed area that would be monitored by a detailed police officer on town property. I know we haven't done that before, but if you ever have gone into Boston, the World Trade Center, or other types of events, whether it be some type of seafood venue or some other type of venue, there are opportunities to have a tasting along the way. And the Onset Bay Association President Mary Lou Payton had presented this to me as a concept going forward. And once again, that's still what it is. But I did see a picture of a very secure tent, probably as secure as some of the other licenses that we've granted in and around that area. And I think the idea here is, once again, just a concept, to be able to move forward and say, Town Council has reviewed this, and there's no impediment if the board feels that this could be done in a reasonable, secure way. And it is a time period. I understand the event that would be held would basically fill in the middle part of an afternoon or early evening.
It
And
would be from 6 o'clock.
just bring it towards you, Teresa.
The event would take place from 6 p.m. until about 10 p.m. and it would take place after a jazz festival that's already been scheduled for the band shell by another group, and during the traditional illumination night. So the illumination night would be happening at the same time this function would be happening on the pier in Onset.
Our hope with doing this is that the illumination night and the jazz festival brings people in, but then there's like a lull and people leave the area. We want to keep them in the area throughout the whole day. And we hope to bring a lot of, not just residents from Onset and Wareham, but we're looking to bring a lot of people from across the state into this. And it's kind of a big undertaking, but we hope it's going to be a good one. Teresa's got a lot more details on.
We have been working with different groups on sponsorship, and people have been very receptive, and the people in town that we've talked to have been very receptive to having an event like this. And it would certainly show off the Onset area. It would also be a catered event, and the focus would be on local products such as local food, wine, and beer. There is a Cape Cod coastal wine trail that goes from our area, like Plymouth County, all the way to Provincetown. There's probably about 11 different wineries that we hope to have involved. So it would really showcase the South Coast area food, like a local caterer, and local businesses would hopefully be taking part in this. And the ones we talked to have all been very much interested in it. And it would be under a tent. It would only be adults only. There would be no children involved at all. It would be, you'd have to purchase a ticket, and that ticket would give you access to the wine tasting and to the food. So once you're in the tent, once you've purchased your ticket, there would be no money exchanged by patrons, and it would be all the alcohol would be served in tasting size portions. So it would be a very controlled environment for anybody who does attend.
Well, if I could, I think, it sounds like a wonderful event, and it sounds like, but there are also things that the town has to take into consideration, and one of the things there are several things that Town Council has recommended to the board. Some of you may have seen the email from Town Council. He recommended that we get a duly licensed one-day permit for this alcohol tasting, so you should submit your application for a permit as soon as possible. He's also concerned with liabilities, and that you will well, more than likely, he's recommended to us that we require you to provide a policy of insurance that names the town as an additional co-insured. I have no idea how much that kind of a policy would cost, but I would suggest that you would need to look into that as soon as possible. And we can, you know, we may be able to consult with our insurance advisor to see what, if anything, we're covered from. And those are the two pieces of advice that
I have been in contact with our insurance agent for the Onset Bay Association. We do have a general liability policy in place, and I was in the process of filling out all the paperwork for the one-day liquor permit. There was just, we had to get the insurance policy rider submitted along with the application, which we were just waiting for from the insurance company. They actually just emailed us this afternoon, so we didn't have a chance to fill that out, but we hope to submit that either tomorrow or by Thursday, so all the paperwork would be submitted for the license, including the rider for the one-day, naming the town for that one-day event. So it's definitely in the works. It was just a matter of a few pieces of paper that we were missing.
Okay, that's great. I wasn't aware how far along in the process you had been advised as to what what may be needed, and then of course there's the, you know, the one-day license and the policy issues that the board needs to address in terms of how we do this. It is the first time going forward, and if the board so desires to, you know, approve a one-day license on town property for that, for this event, and to set precedent for other events, if there are any other events, or if we want to write a policy for the future with regard to this. Board members, I'll open it up to you. Any thoughts, concerns, questions?
I guess you're looking this way first. Through you, Madam Chair, to the board members, you know, there's a real separation here, I think. I understand technically the word consumption of alcohol on town property is the way this is listed here. And I've seen the brochures, and I've looked at the tent and the setup, and I did a little looking at your stuff, and there's a big difference here between this type of an event, having an open bar on Main Street. Okay, this is not a full alcoholic bar. There's no customers. There's no cash. There's no beer. That, you know, I don't know if there's beer and wine. I think it's just wine.
Beer and wine tasting.
It is beer and wine, right? Okay, so there's no Captain Morgan and Cokes or nothing like
No.
that. This is not really a bar event. This is a it's more of a really kind of a classy wine tasting. I don't drink the grapes, so I don't know what that means. But to those who enjoy wine, I mean, I think they give you little cups to taste here and there, and you get a little thing of beer. I don't drink beer either, so it doesn't help me. But I think there's a big difference between having a concealed event inside a tent, we're having a wine tasting event, and having a bar on the stage at Onset Park. I think there's a big difference there. And to have a one-day license and to follow the recommendations, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Anyone else? Mrs. Ekstrom? Mr. Cruz, please go right ahead.
Yeah, I do, Madam Chair. I have a problem with it because it's town property. Anytime you use town property, we're responsible. If we start there, where do we end it at? Everybody else can say, let me put up a tent and I can serve. And you just alluded to it, you sell tickets for $6, $10, whatever it is. And when somebody buys something for $6 or $10, whether he's a drinker or not a drinker, he's going to go in there and get his money's worth.
Get his money's worth.
Right. So I'm a teetotaler, so it doesn't make a difference to me, but I'm worrying about the town property. Now, the only thing is if you rented that piece of land for us for today, I don't know if that's legal. But, you know, I'm against having anything on town property with alcohol. Right. So it's up to the board, but it's a touchy subject. Even with the lawyer's recommendation, it was a touchy subject.
And
I appreciate all you have done for Onset, because you've done great things for Onset. But in the same token, we need to toe the line so it doesn't get out of hand.
I completely understand where you're coming from. I know it's a huge liability issue for the town, and which is why our insurance company, we have approached them with the whole, it would be a one-day event where we would have to have the town named as, in the liability policy directly. And again, I did not have a chance to look at the paperwork or go through it, but we were hoping to bring what we would consider a pretty upscale event to Onset for this one night, where I think Illumination Night and Jazz Festival tends to bring in my opinion, I've only been here for 3 years, I've only seen 3 Illumination Nights in my time, but it tends to be more of a lower key, older audience, and it's a fairly quiet night, and there's really nothing else going on during Illumination Night, and we're hoping to draw the people who are walking around and just going to the beach for that 20 minutes while the flares are there, and bring them into town, walking through town, and go to this lovely event that will be seen from anybody who can see the flares on the beaches. Will be able to see this tent that will be lit up, and it would be kind of along the lines of looking like almost like a wedding, with food. There would be food would also be included. They would be fed, so there's not people will be eating and having glasses of wine and beer, and it's not unlimited consumption, because it's we could do something where we shut the bar down or shut the serving down at a certain time, so all that's left for them to do is food, so the drinking part of it is limited in its time period. But we're trying to showcase that area in a little bit more of an upscale event, which and give, like I said, give people who are walking around something else to do and something very visible. And I do understand the concern about being on town property, but I don't know of physical space where we could have an event like this where they would be able to see all of the the lanterns, or excuse me, the flares from Illumination Night, and also at the same time we're trying to get a lantern type display going on in town. We did it last year. We sold about 500 lanterns, but we hope to really do a bigger push for it this year, so that all the homes all around the water are all lit up with lanterns, as well as Shell Point and Point Independence, so people are staying longer in the town, and either participating in the tasting, or even walking around town and just seeing what else is around in the neighborhood.
Well,
Mrs. Extra.
thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Mr. Cruz. And I understand the liability and how an insurance waiver can cure that. My concern is what happens when somebody wants to get a one-day liquor license for the playground off of Hathaway, because they're going to put a tent up, so it's okay. I also, when you just said that, well, we can close the bar or whatever, my understanding with wine tasting is that you take the wine, someone explains to you what you're tasting, the nuts and berries and fruits, you wish it around and you spit it out. That this is not something that you should even be consuming. So when you're saying that we'll close the bar, I don't know, are you giving,
I think
taste of wine with
getting
different foods?
Yeah,
so that
you're taking the wine tasting term a little bit too little, because that is a wine tasting. Like if you went to a wine tasting and they were trying to sell you a case of that wine, you'd go from booth to booth and you'd taste them and spit them out. But this is more of a social event,
Okay.
where they will get the little cup of wine and they'll drink it.
Okay,
They're
so
not going to be tasting it. It's just called a wine tasting because there'll be so many different types for them to.
And then
select
I
from.
also have a problem, and I understand the Illumination Night. You can say that it's older people walking around. It's also people with young families that walk around or that drive around.
Right.
And
the problem that we've found with Illumination Night, and I love it. I think it's a great event, but it's so much to get there and get ready, and then it's over real fast, and this will kind of prolong the scene of it.
But it won't for me and my 4 children, because we have to leave because there's alcohol in the parking area. And I also, we can't even drive by because you're going to have a big tent that will block a big section of what I'm seeing from up the front. So I have a problem, and like I said, I do have a problem. Aside from that, those specific issues with that. I do have a real problem of what it means going forward. Are we going to make a policy that says only this one particular area of town property will we ever lend out, that will ever allow this to be done? Because I think if you say town property, it's town property. And I think that you're opening up a whole can of worms. And, you know, I think the OBA is a wonderful organization, but I think that that this is just not the right type of thing for the town to be involved with as far as a joint venture, because I think that it, you know, I'm not even worried about the liability because I know insurance will cover that. I'm talking about what it opens up and what it means to the town going forward. You know,
Well,
because
what we kind of hope it will mean is that it opens up more of a tourist area, that people will really see it for the beautiful spot that it is and will want to come here for these events that we have. And that's what we're trying to do.
And that's very admirable, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but what I'm saying is that how can I stop someone from wanting to
Right.
rent from the town, take out a liability, and have a bar, whether it's you know, beer and wine, and they call it a tasting or whatever, on a playground, because it's town property.
I just want to make a comment about that, and because we didn't officially make it, our license application wasn't ready, so we didn't make it to the official, this was a discussion only, so, you know, I hope to be able to present what we have in mind, including like a, similar to what the developer had here, so you could actually see pictures of what we want to do, what wine companies we've been dealing with, the kind of product, but also, you know, it is an application, and if you don't like what we do, you can always deny it. So if you didn't like if you end up that the board likes it, you know, hopefully you'll say yes. But if, you know, if you don't like the event, you'll say it's definitely not something that we want to do. You know, then you would judge it as no, something that you didn't want to do. But that's what the whole application process is for. So.
And I understand the application process.
Mhm.
That's not. I fully understand that. And what I'm saying is that it's bigger than that. It's not the OBA. It's not this particular thing. It comes down to what is the town, what are we going to do? We can't, like I said, I don't think, you know, under arbitrary and capricious, you know, terms in law, I don't think that we can say this area and not this area, or this neighborhood and not this neighborhood. So when we're looking at town property, we really need to consider, and are there certain criterias that your group would fall into, that other groups we could, well, I shouldn't say we could exclude, but that's the type of, and that's why I'm saying it's not this particular event or whatever. Like I said, I side with Walter. I think that we're opening ourselves up to a lot of issues that we, you know, it's a good idea, it sounds good, and I think that we have to really look at what that could mean for us.
And that's why we wanted to invite you in this
Mhm.
evening to be part of the discussion, because it isn't about just this one event, and your application will come before the board and it will be acted upon by the board, but to have a discussion a little bit well in advance of the event, and because I know that we all know that it takes a long time to put together an event of this nature, that's why we wanted to get you get this issue in front of the board as an issue, not as an event, prior to the application for the one-day liquor license coming before us, so that we could air out some of these issues that have to do with policy and process, and put our heads together and see what we were thinking, and also to get maybe some feedback from the general public, who may in fact have some input for this board over the next week or so, or 2 weeks, till the application comes before us. I think that it is you know, that there are good points being made on both sides. We certainly want to attract tourists to our areas. I'm thinking that, you know, there's a suggestion that was made this evening that, you know, that maybe the tickets that you sell would have you punch them somehow, and you only get 4 tastes for $6 or something, so that limits the amount of consumption. I don't know who your pourer will be, but you know, you need to be aware that if the event were to go forward, it would have to be with licensed pourers and all of that. People who are tips trained. Those are things that for safety, additional safety's sake, that I would recommend to you. But again, it's still the larger issue of policy and what kind of precedent are we setting in town. And as Mr. Andrews said right from the beginning, this is our first request of this nature, and so there is no policy or history to go by, and we would be setting precedent, and we have to be very careful about that, because we don't want to then be accused of discriminating against other groups, other places, if the board were to say, oh yes to this group, no to that group, and things along that idea. So I really think that my opinion is that the board really needs to put its head together and come up with a policy that this is either going to go forward, and we're going to have certain things that are within the realm of the law, what's legal, what's not legal, what we can do, what we should do, what town council advises, and put together some sort of a policy that would then become in place and not allow other people to come back at the town and say, well, you let them, but you won't let us, and what kind of ramifications would that have? So, I mean, Illumination Night is great. I remember it from when I was a child. They actually used to do it with the fireworks the same night, and it was always an exciting night to be there and watch the flares go up. And
So really, they did it the same night as the fireworks?
they did way back when. Yeah, they did the illumination first, and then the fireworks went off. In any event, thank you, ladies, for coming in this evening and giving us an idea of what it is that you would like to do, a better idea of what you would like to do, because I think it's important for the board in setting a policy to understand exactly what you have in mind. And again, I encourage you to bring your application forward as soon as possible. And I encourage the board again to we'll put this back on the agenda and have another discussion as far as whether or not we want to go forward with a policy. Did anybody else have anything else they wanted to add? Mr. Cruz?
Yes, I know you must have done your homework, but there must be other venues in town that you approach to holding at their facilities, or we have vacant buildings you may use?
Well, we have thought about other places as Plan B and C and D,
Our
if need
biggest
be.
Plan B was Wickets, and that kind of just fell apart on us, but
And we also thought about the golf course, but that would kind of take the whole point of showing off the harbor.
yeah, my thoughts on that was that it's really too far away to bring people into the beach area to see it. It wouldn't do what we wanted to do. We wanted to keep people from the jazz festival to the wine tasting to Illumination and all in the same area.
How about
so
the
if
inn
we
at
did it up at the golf course, it would.
What about the inn at the end of the point? I can't think of the name of it. It's escaping me at the moment.
Point Independence?
Point
or the inn
Independence. The inn at
the
Point
inn at,
Independence. What is
the inn at
the
Onset
Kennedys own it? I can't think of the.
The inn at Onset Bay or in,
I mean, that would be. I know there's not a
Yeah.
lot of parking there, and it is a
that
little
what it
bit
is?
out of the way. Well, anyway, clearly you've had your thinking caps on, and again, we appreciate you coming before the board to help
And we
us.
thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
We're going
Thank
to go
you.
ahead and fill out our applications and hope you'll decide for us.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
thank you very
you.
much,
Thank
and
you
have
for
a
your
good
time.
evening.
Congratulations.
Yes, and good luck with your leadership roles. We know they can be difficult.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to wrap that issue up, do we want to come back and try to come up with a policy? Do we want to vote on it next week, or we want to just wait for the application to come forward?
Well, I think that maybe, seeing we all know this is coming forward, that perhaps we could all kind of look, and I don't want to say everyone write a policy, but we could draft ideas for a policy, and I think that we should probably have a policy in place.
Would you like to
if that-
volunteer
No.
for that? Or you wouldn't?
My policy would be none.
Oh, well,
Mr.
we don't want
Andrews,
you right. We don't
well,
want you
maybe
writing
let me make the
policy.
suggestion then, board, if I could. Mr. Andrews, perhaps we could look to see if there are any other communities that have a policy on consumption of alcohol on town
Sure
property.
thing.
There must be somebody out there, and rather than reinvent the wheel. If there are any
I will look
communities.
into it, Madam
A
Chair.
lot of festivals are held in cities and towns on town property where they have beer and wine.
I
Right.
will
So,
research it and
thank
get
you.
back to you. Thank you.
Maybe even our council might be aware of some community that has a policy for
Sure.
the use of town property and serving alcohol. Okay, we have to vote on the special town meeting dates this evening. There's going to be a special town meeting in addition to our regular town meeting in April, as there usually is. Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair. Process for calling a special town meeting April 25th, 2011 at 7:30 p.m. within annual town meeting. Tuesday, February 1st, 2011, Board of Selectmen should establish all dates for completion of a warrant for the special town meeting. Friday, February 18, 2011, last day to post in at least one public place in each precinct notice of intention of Board of Selectmen to call a special town meeting for April 25th, 2011. Bylaw Division 1, Article 1, Section 3, 10 days before warrant closes. Thursday, March 10th, publication in local newspaper of notice of intent to call a special town meeting, 45 days or more before the date of town meeting. Friday, March 18, 2011, last day to submit articles to be inserted in the warrant. Tuesday, March 22nd, 2011, Board of Selectmen should officially close the warrant. Friday, March 25th, 2011, last day to post in each precinct and deliver a copy of warrant to the town moderator and to the chairman of each committee established by Section 2.5 of the Wareham Home Rule Charter, within 3 days of a closing of the warrant. Thursday, March 31st, 2011, last day to publish entire warrant in local newspaper, not less than 14 days before town meeting. Monday, April 25th, 2011, commencement of special annual town meeting.
Second.
For discussion,
Yes.
why are we printing it in March? The warrant, it's 14 days, no more than 14, or no less than 14 days before town meeting. Usually it's printed the week after the elections. Like,
Wait a second.
I don't understand why we're printing it so early.
Mr. Andrews?
Print? I don't, it doesn't say print anywhere.
Well, to publish, which is, I think
Well, publish is
Mrs.
to
Exner
print.
means to
Publish is
publish
just-
the entire warrant.
Last day to publish the entire warrant in a local newspaper.
Right, that's not printing the warrant.
No, that's having it printed in a paper, I'm sorry, to have it published in a paper. I don't understand why we're,
We might have been a little aggressive on that, Madam Chair, and certainly any modification that could be suggested. I think it's important to make sure we hit the estimated timelines. And is it March 10th, Madam Chair?
Town
Right.
meeting is April 25th,
No, it's March 31st.
and you've got the, so it's 25 days. You're publishing in the paper 25 days before town meeting.
It says no less than 14.
And we don't have to have it.
I understand that,
Right,
but you
no.
know,
We had
when
a
you-
delay town meeting last year because it wasn't published. He's trying to be ahead of the curve.
Okay, and I can appreciate that, but what happens is that if you print it a couple weeks beforehand, 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, people usually save the newspaper. This way, okay, well, I don't care, we can do it the 31st. It's just,
I think we should move it ahead another week, 25 days. I mean, you're talking about 25 days if we move it
I
to...
mean, if we're gonna make the mistake again and print it wrong again,
Now you're talking about 18 days ahead of time if you do 1 week from March 31st, which would be April 7th. Is it April 7th? Can you look on the calendar behind you?
That would
Or
be
somebody have a calendar handy?
this is one of them.
I think 18 days before is plenty.
April 7th.
I mean, I think, you have the election, which is what, April 5th?
Right.
And so in the middle of the last of the election,
Right.
we're gonna print this people won't have this stuff a month later.
Well, if you,
And
if
I
we,
know that it was pushed forward because of errors before, but hopefully those errors won't be made again. You know, I mean.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Of no
I'm
fault of
hoping.
yours.
I'm really hoping.
No, I would say of no fault of yours, but I would say I hope that we won't have those problems, so we don't have to be giving ourselves all that lead time.
We'll note that you tried
Hard.
when it happened.
Mrs. Ekstrom, would you entertain making an amendment to Thursday, April 7th, 2011, to be published in the warrant? That's 18 days. That's 18 days,
April 7th?
which is only 4 days more than what's allowable, and the newspaper schedule was a Thursday schedule, basically, so. I mean, we couldn't do it on the following Thursday, because that would be,
Wouldn't be enough.
we would miss it. It would be less, it would be fewer than 14 days.
Nope, I'll leave it the way it is. I will make an amendment.
No amendments?
No, I just think that we're just being very conservative, that's all. That's fine.
Does anybody else wish to make that amendment? Everybody else is happy with the 31st? All right then, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? It's 3-1-0.
Now we can. Now we can. No, now we can mess it up, because we've given him all that extra lead time.
But he won't.
Well, it's not him.
Not him anyway, right?
And it wasn't him anyway last time. So.
Right. Okay, conservative can be good sometimes. Mr. Cruz.
Notice of April 25th, 2011 special town meeting, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Plymouth County. Either of the constables of the town of Wareham, in the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in accordance with the provisions of Division 1, Article 1, Section 3 of the bylaws of the town of Wareham, amended, you are hereby directed to notify and warn the legal voters of the town of Wareham that a special town meeting has been called by the Board of Selectmen and held at 7:30 p.m. on Monday, April 25, 2011, at which time the business of the town meeting shall be transacted. The deadline of submission of articles to be inserted in the warrant is 5 p.m. Friday, March 18, 2011. Petition articles will be accepted up until on March 18, 2011. And you are hereby directed to serve this notice by posting attest copies thereof in at least one public place in each precinct within the town on or before Friday, March 25, 2011. Thereof fail not, and make due return of this posting with your doings thereon to the town clerk, given under our hands at the Wareham this first day of February in the year 2011. So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's 4-0-0. Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
Next item on the agenda is a Westfield discussion. Mr. Holmes?
Thank you.
Dennis, would you like to have a copy? I made extra, so you can have a copy. Madam Chair, last week we went through some of these things, and I will admit that my memory is weak. But basically, we agreed to outline the role of the committee in the Board of Selectmen, so that once we finish our interviews and appoint the people to the committee, we've established the marching orders already, as this committee is an advisory board to the Board of Selectmen.
I prefer the word charter to marching orders, if you don't mind,
All right.
Mr. Holmes.
Okay. We can
Charter the committee.
charter the role of the committee, if you will. So I had volunteered to take some of the notes and put this together, but I still have some questions, if we could just run through it real quick. And I was going to email this to people, but I was really concerned about emailing this under the open meeting law, so I just decided to hand it out tonight. Basically, it talked about we talked a little bit about the point of the purpose of the committee, the advisory board, as I called it, was to review the Westfield article, to review the Westfield RFP, and we stressed that it would be provided by the Board of Selectmen to the committee, and that the committee would make recommendations, review the RFP and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. That's kind of where that was. The main purpose of and the mission was to provide the best possible advice to the Board of Selectmen and make recommendations on the RFP that is provided by the Board of Selectmen. I'm not trying to repeat myself 1,000 times, but I am trying to repeat myself 1,000 times, that the RFP is to be provided by the Board of Selectmen. Under the statement of work, we had agreed that each member of the advisory board would receive a printed copy the existing RFP. The Board of Selectmen will provide edits and additional changes to the original RFP to the advisory board, and I meant to say in writing there. And a member of the advisory board will be present at all Board of Selectmen meetings, as we have now added this as a part of our agenda going forward until this process is completed. And that member of the committee didn't have to be the chairperson, didn't have to be the scribe or the secretary, just a representative to come before us every week to update the selectmen on the status of the advisory board, to ask any questions, or to get any clarifications on any issue dealing with the RFP. The last thing we want is to turn up, sometime in the end of March, and then have the advisory board show up with 100 different things, and we're ready to give it to Mr. Andrews. So we thought that by keeping both the advisory board and the Board of Selectmen on track, this would be a good way to do that. The next question, this comes in the form of a question to the board. Should we appoint a liaison to the group?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Please.
I don't think so. I think if they're coming in to see us every week, I don't think we need to have a liaison to them.
Just a question.
Yeah.
That's why.
So I just my answer would be I don't think so. Or I wouldn't suggest it.
You don't think so? Walter?
No, I don't think so. I think we're going to pick the best people possible to be on the board.
Right.
And we should have enough faith in them to do what's right for the town of Wareham.
Okay.
So, without having a liaison, I think it'll be good.
Madam Chair?
Because sometimes it's an intimidation factor.
I concur.
Okay. And then basically the last statement was just to reaffirm before we establish this group that this advisory board is not formed to write an RFP, that is our responsibility, and that they are going to review our RFP and make recommendations. It's just the same thing that was in the above. Now, here's where it gets a little washy for me, is on the time frame. The interview part is easy. We've got that down pretty well, that the interviews will be split between 1/8 and 15 February. Then we would select the members to the advisory board. Now, the question is, and we didn't talk about this, should we also appoint, and I think we can do this under our purview as Board of Selectmen, can we also appoint maybe 2 alternates to the group? Let's say we got 7 people, and they're working on this thing, and God forbid somebody got sick and had to back out. Then we're in the middle of this process, and we try to backfill the 7th person with somebody who hasn't been to any of the meetings. It was just an idea to have a couple of alternatives, alternates, not alternatives, but alternates appointed to the group.
I appreciate the idea, but I think that we're limited by the passage of the article at town meeting that said we would have 7 members.
Well, did the article not recommend to the Board of Selectmen to create this advisory board? of 7 members?
It
We're
did.
doing that. We are
7.
fulfilling that mission.
7 members.
Right. So this is a very short term, as you'll see in our timeline. It's a very short-term project, and if you lose 1 or 2 people, God forbid they get sick, we have 5 people, and then we don't have a 7-member board of advisors.
Well,
We're not changing the 7. We're just saying maybe we have a couple of alternates that go to all the meetings. They don't vote or anything, but just like a jury panel,
Well-
if you will.
well, I would think that, first of all, because it's the Westfield senior housing and with the recreation component, that I would hope that everyone who's on it is working towards that goal. And I would think that anyone who is interested would attend these meetings, even if they're not on the committee. So if there's someone who is attending these committees, I mean, we heard from 3 people today, this evening, and every one of them, 1 attended every meeting, 1 attended almost every meeting, and 1 attended several meetings. So if it matters to people, these are open public meetings. They can go to these meetings, and you know what, if they're sitting in the audience and, God forbid, someone gets ill, the chairman could say, hey, you've been sitting here listening to it. But I think that, it didn't say that we have to appoint and get the recommendation from a 7-member board. We appoint 7 members. If something happens and there's only 6 members at the end of it, and it is a short term, then we still fulfilled our obligation. But I don't think we need, I think adding alternates, I think we talked last week that I don't see this being a long-term thing.
No.
And so, I think adding more layers and stuff, I think and then the alternates are, well, can I ask questions or can I contribute, but I just can't vote, and things like that. It's kind of like now you're making it bigger and
Less manageable for the
Yeah.
chairman or the rest of the committee. Raises all those kinds of issues, and I don't mean to belabor the point about the article specifically saying 7 members, but I think that,
It's just a question.
yep, I understand.
So I can
I must have like a really attacking voice tonight, because I don't mean it. I would say I thought that you took something I said personally, and I don't want you, like, if I disagree, I don't want you to.
Yeah, stop yelling at me.
It's all the snow, it's the snow.
I'm just trying to get these questions rounded off so that I can finish putting this document together. Okay.
So we'll select
We
that.
also talked about a workshop for us, because
Which I think
there's an initial piece of the RFP that's there, and we need to spend some time to go through this. And so that if there are any edits or additions that we need to be able to provide to the group, and we're going to be appointing them in 3 weeks, so we need to pick a date for the workshop.
Yes, I think that's absolutely imperative, and I think we should do that tonight.
Maybe we can put a couple of dates aside. Maybe you want to do it like on a.
We've also, just for the board's information, I think I may have mentioned this before, but the town planner has actually pulled the RFP. And looking at the article that was passed at town meeting, making some additions to it. So when we were asking people tonight if they had looked at the RFP, I just didn't want them to be confused and think that the RFP that's out there is the RFP that we've edited, because we haven't edited that RFP. The RFP that's on the website is from the previous proposal from last year. It's not the current RFP.
But we don't have a current RFP, isn't
That's
that?
correct, we
Right,
don't.
and this is, and I guess even with that, as you were saying, that I put a question mark beside that, because it says that we'll provide edit and additional changes to the original. What is their job then?
To review and make recommendations.
Right.
They're not writing it's our responsibility
No,
to do the final product.
And I'm not saying that we're not, but what I'm saying is that if they're going to review it, that
Right.
means they're going to read what we've edited and changed,
Right.
We're going to give them a draft,
and then they're going to recommend something, but
and
we've
then
already given them the draft. What are they recommending?
We might
incorporate their changes or
Right.
suggestions, which is what the whole point is
Well,
that we give them a draft, and then they review it and make suggestions and
Maybe we
incorporate
agree with
with
suggestions and maybe we don't.
we're gonna do it all of it first.
Correct.
Then we're gonna give it to them to look at,
To review,
and then they're gonna, if they find anything that we missed,
or
then we're
that they
gonna
want to
take it back.
recommend, right? They're a review and recommend committee, right? You give them the document, they're gonna review it and make recommendations as advisors. They're not writing this.
I absolutely agree with you that they're not
So then
writing
they're gonna
it.
give it back to us, or they're gonna make recommendations on the document. We can either accept those recommendations or not.
But I guess what I'm missing is that what is the sense of us writing and editing and making the changes in a document that we're gonna give to someone who we're gonna ask them for feedback on, and they're gonna make recommendations, then we're gonna bring it back, and, I mean,
Yeah,
let
it's
me-
a
let me
back
try
and
to
forth
clear it.
process.
If I could.
Please.
If, in the original, as I recall, there was no discussion of, I don't know, building baseball fields. Okay?
exactly.
Exactly. So, we as a board, you need to write that, get that piece done. It's not for them to write, it's for us to provide the RFP to them. This is what I'm saying. This is why I keep repeating this, because this is what we agreed to, and now it's starting to shift. It seems like it's starting to shift. They're not going to write an RFP for the town. That's our responsibility.
I'm not saying, here's the RFP, okay? This is the RFP.
Right,
This is what's on our website.
right.
What I'm wondering is why would we sit down, rewrite, add to this or whatever, when the town meeting voted to add this component? I'm not saying for them to rewrite this and add it. I'm saying for them to put a little caret or a red line and say, we feel you should add this,
Right.
this, and this here.
Okay.
So
Then they're
not-
going to make those recommendations.
Right.
And we're either going
But
to
we're gonna write it up first.
put it in the document or we're not. Correct?
I thought we would give them the document as
Give them this.
edited, give them that with the very basic edits that were voted on at town meeting, and then ask them to review it and make any further recommendations that they would like to make.
But that's what I thought, but that's what I'm wondering is that,
Who's going to put the
Well,
part
that's
in about the ballparks? That's not in there.
between the town planner adding it, which is what town meeting said, and them, they're gonna put in, this is what we recommend, this is the you know, the
All right,
maintenance
so
agreement
actually
we recommend.
you're making this a lot shorter, so they need to meet maybe, what, 3 times? If that?
Yeah,
If the document's already done,
right, this is already done,
and all they're going to do is read it and make those recommendations, and that's the end of it,
right,
then it should be over pretty quick.
right, cause that's, I mean, and that's what I mean, because we already have this. We were told by town meeting, you add a sports maintenance component.
Right.
I thought that was why one of the big things we were doing is we were looking at, we wanted people with extensive experience in how to, you know, their experience with RFPs, your 3 questions.
Right.
How much experience you have, because, and nothing against some of the people, but we didn't want people that would just like, you know, oh, well, I
love
like
seniors
architecture,
and
I
yeah,
love,
right,
yeah.
got
It
it.
wasn't just that, we wanted people that actually understood the RFP process, because they were gonna take that part of what the town meeting recommended, and they were gonna pretty much put that in as, like, if you look through here, it has, like, an outline on all of, you know, every single thing that they're supposed to be doing, you know, it's the entire outline, that there's gonna be another number of, you know, another section, and that will be ball fields, and then it will have all of that, and that is essentially, they're gonna review this to make sure it's all on the up and up, and then they're gonna take this and recommend adding a component for the ball fields and say, these are the recommendations that we make, here is you know, the reasons why, or the supporting evidence, or whatever, as to why these would be favorable, and it would be people who had experience with writing RFPs, especially in this field, so that when we saw them, then we would look at them, look at their reasoning, and say, yeah, we're gonna add that in, or we think
They
we should
recommend
tweak it like
adding it
this.
in.
Right,
Right.
they're not doing it.
Right.
They're
Well, that's
not-
what, I think we're saying the same thing. Sounds to me like we're saying the
Now,
same
you
thing.
said the same thing. You're either gonna hand them that one, that's the old one, that needs to be reworked, and have the one that the planner, like the chairman just said, the planner's gonna go over it and change it. So what's the difference? If they change that one or change the one that we give them? So it's our responsibility to do it. So the planner will do it, bring it to us, and then we'll give it to them and it's over with.
Yeah.
And then when they bring it back, if they change it a little bit, we look at it again.
I don't know, I guess I'm missing something. I guess I wanted to give a review and recommendation committee something to do.
But
Because
not
I
to
don't-
write the RFP. That's right, they're
No,
gonna
but-
review that and recommend. Now, if we put together a whole new section, let's say, I don't know, streetlights or something. We put that together as a board of selectmen. How are they gonna review and recommend that unless we give it to them? That's all I'm saying. Any edits or anything that we add as a board, we need to deliver to them to review. We're gonna add things to that as well, I'm sure.
I know,
All I'm saying is we're gonna give them the main document, and then any edits that we make, we're gonna give back to them to review.
wouldn't it be anything that they recommend? That
What about
they give
us?
it
That
to-
we're not allowed to make changes?
No, Steve, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, I mean, look, if you wanna meet every Saturday for a workshop,
I
2-3
don't.
hours,
No,
for
I
us to
don't.
work on it, I have no problem with that, believe me. But what I'm saying is that I don't understand, what are we giving them? We're giving them all of our work for them to say okay, to give it back to us, for us to say okay?
And I think if I could, Mrs. Ekstrom, if,
I-
let's
I'm
put, let me
something.
see if we can, you know, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm also thinking about what the community expects from the Westfield Review and Recommendations Advisory Board. And I think that it's very much in line with what you're trying to say, is that it shouldn't be the Board of Selectmen's RFP. It should be the Recommendation Advisory Board's RFP brought back to us.
I haven't read that anywhere, Madam Chair. I'd like to see that written. I believe that the town meeting authorized the Board of Selectmen to deliver this project back to the town. The Westfield Study Group is over. This is a review. You're the one who kept telling me these words. A review and recommendation committee on the RFP. It's our responsibility as Board of Selectmen to do that.
And I think where the review part really comes in, not review our RFP, the recommendations part comes in at the RFP, the pre-RFP level, okay? They put the recommendations into the RFP. The review part comes after we put the request for proposal out and we get the proposals back in. That's when they review the proposals with us and also, again, make recommendations. It's not just about putting the RFP out.
See,
It's about getting the proposals back
that's,
in.
we didn't discuss it. That's why I ask for this every week.
Right. Well, I think that
Because
was...
it's important, because we all have to be on the same sheet of music here going forward.
I agree, and that's why I'm, taking the time to explain what the intent of the Westfield Study Group was, and what I believe the Review and Recommendations Advisory Board was to be about. Not just putting together the RFP and making recommendations to the board as to what should be in the RFP, but also to be making a review of the proposals after they come in and recommending to the board what they think of the proposals. There's two pieces to the Review and Recommendations Advisory Board. One is the pre-RFP, putting it together and making sure that it has everything that's in there that the town meeting voted on, and to the best of their ability and their knowledge, which goes back to their experience with RFPs and knowing the process, and advising us on RFPs, as well as taking the town planner's advice into consideration. And then once we agree that that's the RFP that we want, and we put it out there to get bids on, we're going to get proposals back. And the board is going to have to review those proposals and decide whether or not anybody meets the criteria sufficiently to go forward with the project. And that's what the board's responsibility is. The board is authorized to go forward with the project once the proposals are in, and to select that project and move forward, but not to do it without the advice and review and recommendations from the advisory board. That would be part of the process, so that it's not just put together the RFP, let them give us advice on it, and then when the proposals come in, the board can do whatever it wants with them. The board still has to take under advisement the input on the proposals as well.
So it's not a shorter-term gig as we've been talking about.
Well, it's
Well,
a
for the
short-term gig to get the
to get it
RFP out.
To get it out, but
Okay.
this is a whole different component. We hadn't discussed this yet.
But to bring it back, it's only 1 or 2 meetings that they would have. They're gonna look at them all, review them, give
Right, so
their
that
I would
piece-
hope, I would hope that that process would take longer than the actual RFP document. I mean, that's where you really have to get into the
Right,
to the nitty-gritty. That's the most important part of the is the response and
right, and the
trying to
selection
select
process.
who has this, who benefits this, who gives the town this, who gives the town that.
Right.
That's where it gets granular.
Right, and that's where this committee also plays a role, this advisory board also plays a role. And that's part of the,
That's the
part
part
of
we're
what,
missing in this whole
that's
piece.
part of, right,
so.
and we need, so we just need to build on this piece.
Right.
But this is part A, if you will.
Right.
And it's a great part A, Steve,
Okay.
and appreciate the effort that you put into this, because
So-
it does, and Mrs. Ekstrom's, points are well taken. We want to have people, select people for the advisory board who do have RFP experience and who can advise this board and who can make sure that those components are all properly placed in the request for proposal before it's
And-
put out for bid.
And I think that,
So we're gonna hold off. Well, I know it's getting late. Let me just go
It
through
is,
the
well,
last
yes, we
three.
need a
last
motion to
three
go
real
beyond
quick.
the hour 10,
So on the
please.
workshop piece, we
So
we don't have to do
Is there
that
a
today,
Second.
right?
All in
we don't
favor?
have to.
I,
Aye. Okay, we're going for the past
All right,
the
so
hour 10.
we know at some point we're gonna do a workshop at the completion of the beginning piece. So we don't have to set the date today, but
Right, and one of the things that I was going to suggest about that is that when the advisory board is ready to present to the board, I mean, I know we're going to have the person coming on a weekly basis, but I
Right.
think that at some point, a joint workshop with the advisory committee
fine.
prior to proving the final RFP before
Right.
it goes out would probably
think-
be a good venue to
we talked
talk
Right.
about our final changes or our...
And of course, final changes. We had a date, but
So
we
combine
didn't
those
actually
two.
come up with a date for that. Oh, yes, we did, March
March
21st. One Man Weekly, March 21st was the completion date.
I thought it was March 26th that we had talked about having.
Yeah, see,
as
that's
a
why I wrote
Saturday.
down the 21st. What? Let me see.
Well,
And would that be the date then that we would want to have the Board of
One
Selectmen
second.
advisory
Yes, March
board?
26th was the Saturday, Madam Chair.
that was a joint,
After that last Tuesday, right?
yeah.
A joint
Yeah.
effort.
And I was going to say that I also think that, Madam Chair, you brought this up, was that one of the things, and I don't want to keep going over it, but I agree that they're not writing it. It's kind of already drafted, they're going to make recommendations, and then we're going to take those recommendations. But I think that one of the reasons why that town meeting, because I do agree with you that as far as town meeting, I mean, town meeting, for lack of a better word, didn't trust the selectmen to do this for 3, 4, 5 years or whatever it was. And finally, they saw the value in it, but that is why I believe that when the Westfield Study Committee came back and said, but we're going to have this advisory board doing these recommendations and reviewing it or whatever, then the town meeting felt more comfortable, that there was a check and balance, if
Are
you
you
will, or
saying the
something.
town meeting doesn't trust the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, maybe they trust us now, but I don't know if they trusted us.
Well, on the RFP, still you're telling the committee to look at the RFP. That RFP is null and void, in other words. The town already voted on what we have to put in there. So let the planner put in what has to be in there, and then we can give it to them. Because there's changes
That's
gotta
what-
be made.
It's a minimal
Because
edit.
that was right. Why should they go over there and worry about putting the ball field in and worrying about different other
They're not.
things?
It's a good
It
starting
should
point.
be
I
already in
think
there.
that's a good compromise. We take that document,
Right.
planner loads in what town meeting said
Right.
in the appropriate places, and then they take it and do whatever else they're going to do with it.
Right.
And we can still
Just
have
to make sure that we're,
Yeah, we still, that's
I mean, we want to help
pretty
them and
much
give
what we
them
talked about last week. I
a
think.
good start. with all the little pieces
Right.
in there, and then whatever else they do and
Okay,
advise
so I'll
us
take
on.
this, Madam Chair, and embellish on these paragraphs. We will set as a target then 326 for the joint venture. And then would we want to have like one before that? Or really, I mean, we don't really need to do that then. If we're just going to give them the planner's document, we don't need to have another workshop to discuss what?
To give
So we
it
have
to
the
them?
joint workshop.
To give it to them?
Right.
Okay,
so
here you go.
we'll have the combined
Right, they'll be, I mean,
Workshop.
they'll be updating us weekly.
weekly.
And
Right.
then once they feel that they're
Okay.
at a,
And our target is
year
still
yet?
to turn this over to Mr. Andrews
And if,
by April 1st.
if I may, it might be a good idea to, after we appoint them on the 15th, then the next week, 22nd, or the 22nd, we could have them in as a group, and they can
On Tuesday
and we
night,
can-
Madam
we-
Chair?
Right, on the Tuesday evening, and say, here you
Okay.
go, thank you for serving, here's the RFP,
That's what I'm thinking about, right?
give us
Okay.
go do
Yeah.
your thing and come
Yeah.
back and see us on the
Yeah,
26th
give
of
them 4 or
March.
5 weeks to get it done. I can't imagine it taking more than that to review.
No, I don't think it should. I think we'll have people who have experience and expertise in RFPs, because we are gonna, as Mr. Cruz said, appoint the people who are the most qualified to.
I'm concerned about emailing this document, though.
No, it's
to-
informational purposes, and I don't think that would be, there's no deliberation involved, it's an informational
As long
document.
as nobody answers me back, it's okay to update this and send it. That's why I didn't send it to the board, because I wasn't sure if this was okay or not to send this. It's in our it's on the agenda.
You're not
it's in
asking
our-
for anybody's opinion on anything, you're just sending an informational document that we've discussed at an open meeting.
Right, and then by the time we get through the next couple of weeks, this will be full, and we'll have a good working charter for them.
Very good, great.
Cut it short. There we go.
The meeting, the rest of the meeting, yeah. Well, I just have one item under any other town business, and that is the board should, we should be doing a formal, open, public evaluation of the town administrator. Are you ready for this, Mr. Andrews? And I just wanted to put it on here. We would have a discussion next week, possibly, on his evaluation. I know that we had a 6-month evaluation to denote the probation period. Mr. Andrews has been with us just slightly more than a year at this point, and I believe the contract does call for a performance evaluation at the end of each year, so I would like to suggest that we do that next week's agenda.
That we do the evaluation, do you have,
Next week?
do you
Next
have
week.
a form? Or like do you have anything that,
We do have the, I do have the paperwork from the, when we went through the job objectives and goals, and I will
if you can get that
re-email
to us
that.
so we can, yeah. So we
I
can
will,
all
I will,
review it
I'll
and
send that to you again, so you don't have to go hunting for it from
get my
June.
big red pen out.
That's all I have. Does anybody else have any other town business?
I have a couple things. Stop the violence, we had a planning meeting last week. It was very well attended. We will be having another planning meeting this Thursday, 6:30 in this room. Anyone who, nonprofits, businesses, people who are active, in the community, people who live in the community or work in the community and just care about the community. If you want to help us plan a rally vigil that I think we had a lot of great ideas. We were kind of, I mean this in a positive way, all over the map with good suggestions. And this week we're going to try to bring it back in. I spoke with Chief Stanley today. I spoke with Lieutenant Walsh and a couple of the officers over the last few days. And they're very excited about it. So if there's anyone out there that wants to get involved, or you know someone that wants to get involved to help us plan it, please show up here Thursday at 6:30.
And if I could just elaborate on that for a second, the Stop the Violence Committee, if you will, is doing a lot of things, and I would like to commend Selectman Ekstrom for her initiative in getting it started. We did have participation from the schools, from the police department, from the Boys and Girls Club, from youth organizations, from church and clergy. There are a lot of people who are interested in working on both short-term goals and plans, the short-term plan being some events to raise community awareness.
And I'm working on an agenda even.
And we're also looking at longer-term goals, as mentoring programs for our youth, and to be working with the court systems in trying to get some more attention to some of the repeat offenders in our community. We have had indication from the court system that they are willing to participate and help us with our community effort. And I'd like to thank the folks who showed up last week. And again, we're all looking to raise people's awareness and to see what we can do as a community to raise the level of respect and civility for one another, and to teach our children and our youth the same, in the hope that we can stop the violence and or at least bring it to a somewhat of a screeching halt. We're looking at everything from gun amnesty programs to, as I said, mentoring programs, and some involvement of the community, further involvement of the community with the things that are going on in the school department, that are planned to be going on in the school department. So bring your ideas and your thinking cap and join us on Thursday evening at 6:30. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I had spoken to Mrs. Ekstrom. I got a few phone calls on this, on the time of the meeting, and I noticed you moved it up a half hour.
I figure I'll split the difference.
And to those who called, there were some business people and folks who work during the day, and they don't get in till late, and they were hoping maybe a 7 o'clock start time would be. But the start time is 6:30. But as Mrs. Ekstrom told me that,
Join in.
Don't worry. There's no late to the meeting, correct?
Right. There's no
I'm
late.
always late.
If
so.
if they can't make it till 7 or 7:30,
That's fine.
I'll
I'm
be
sure
there.
we'll still be here. And there are folks that we've invited to come who, do get off work at 4:30 or 5 and are going to be hanging around till 6:30 to show up too. So we're trying to meet people in the middle on the time of the meeting. So.
Okay. And I was saying just one other thing. If people saw me grab my BlackBerry here, Kara had just wanted to clarify that I guess earlier in the meeting we had talked about that she wasn't in attendance Friday. She said she just wanted to make it clear that it wasn't that she just decided that she didn't go, that she had car trouble. And so she just wanted to make that clear. So I can email that, I guess, or print that particular thing, so if anyone wants it, because it did come in on my BlackBerry. So, but I just wanted to get that out there. People saw me doing it, and just to get that out, she didn't want people hanging out there thinking that she didn't go. That she had an issue that she couldn't get there because of.
Any other town business that you have, Mrs. Ekstrom?
No, but I have 2 sewer businesses.
Okay, let's do any other town business. Mr. Cruz, Mr. Holmes, we're good? Okay, we have any other sewer business?
Okay. Me? Okay, I would like to see if the Board of Sewer Commissioners, if we may want to consider, if you remember when Mr. Campina came in with Woodard and Curran, that they were talking about that once they figured out these things, that there was 123,000 gallons, I don't know what it was, but there was a certain number. And I know that, speaking of Westfield, that one of the things with the Westfield RFP was either doing a package treatment plant or tying into sewer. And I mean, depending upon how many units that we're estimating, and I know from the previous RFPs what it was, but that the board may want to consider, just food for thought, to consider reserving 20 or 25,000 gallons for the Westfield project, so that they could tie into sewer, which would actually be another benefit for the developer and could actually lower the prices of the units, because they don't have to put in a package treatment plant. So that's just one thing for consideration. The second thing is at the MMA, they have innovation awards, And one of the things that they had mentioned, but they didn't have any specific information on it, was an anaerobic digestion to offset energy costs. In Fairhaven, they got the money through stimulus funding, but in Fairhaven, they're taking the sludge from the sewer plant, and they have bacteria eating it, and the heat of it is actually, it's energy, and they're going to save approximately $300,000 a year in energy costs at their sewer plant. And there's a gentleman's name here and everything, and I mean, we're talking about taking in the sludge and all of that stuff. So, you know, when we did look at the idea of putting a wind turbine up, you know, a few years ago, and, you know, there's a lot of concerns about that stuff as they've been going forward. But I thought that seeing this is our next door neighbor just about in Fairhaven, that it's some serious money that we could be saving. And it's on the idea of, until recently, anaerobic digestion, the process through which sludge and other forms of waste are converted into energy, was practical for only very large operations such as the Deer Island Sewage Treatment Plant in Boston Harbor. And then, but thanks to technical refinement. So I think that this might be, I have a copy for everyone. The gentleman, Bill Fitzgerald in Fairhaven. But I have copies for all of us, but I'd like to see if Mr. Andrews could forward this to Guy, and maybe Guy could talk to this guy and see if this is something that...
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yes. In fact, if the weather holds, we have a TA's meeting in Lakeville tomorrow, and I can talk with the TA there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really, I mean, it sounds like a great idea. If you could pass those down. And that's all I have. Take all I have if you want. Huh.
Is there anything else? Mr. Andrews, did you have anything else you wanted to
I'm all set, Madam Chair.
mention
Thank you.
to the board?
I'm good,
Cool,
thank you.
huh?
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night.
Good night.